Okay, hey folks, how's it going? Just jumping back on YouTube again, doing a little bit of opening of cards as usual, and going through some sketchbooks to maybe even draw with you guys for a little bit here if we can. As we're waiting for some people to jump in, asking questions, there's going to be a bit of back and forth Q&A as per usual. So I hope you guys enjoy this session as we go through some of the hobbies that I have and also explorations of things that I've been doing the past year or so, and of course just obviously updating the sketchbooks, which ones that have not been filled just yet. So let's jump into it. I'll go through these sketchbooks in just a moment, and there are specific, particular ones that I want to share a bit more. They are accordion books, so the sketchbooks themselves are connected through one long sheet of paper. And this one in particular was done last year, I believe. I don't think there's a year on it. But it was obviously finished up last year. This one is the next one that I had completed, and this one was from this year. This is 2022, and all these sketchbooks are filled up on both sides, so I'll go through these in explorations in just a moment. This is the current one I'm using right now, another Etcher accordion book, and so this one has just begun, and I'm about halfway through on one half of the side, and we'll maybe even sketch in this a bit more in later today's session. But I'll go into these specific details of the drawings and more talking also about like why I've been using these accordion books and also how I tend to use them. I've been showing some of these at the different conventions and shows in this past year. So when I bring these out, people are very curious and interested in seeing them. Some of them people have never even seen accordion books. What is the benefit of it, but also what are some of the difficulties and challenges of using a book like this? So I'll definitely get into that a bit more as we get into today. In the meantime, today was also another excuse for me to open more sports cards. So I have a box that I've had in the last week or so, which I've been waiting to open up, and it's a bit of a older one, a rarer one. So I'll see if I can go in there and just find some cards I've been wanting to collect. I've been going through a whole collection of cards that I have. I have like hundreds and hundreds of cards, sports cards right now. Some of these are just from the previous last 2 years. I've been opening up a lot of them. So these are some just collections of things that I have from old 80s and 90s collections of cards I will buy new in boxes on eBay, and then I would like open them for fun. Again, a lot of times I just use them for collections of things. Like these are some other ones I've sleeved up. Again, 90s, 80s cards. A lot of George and stuff I was looking for back then. So I'm going to open up this one in particular. And as I do so, I'll definitely answer some questions, interact, talk with you guys a bit more. And then we'll be getting into some of the sketchbook stuff in just a moment. The opening of the pack shouldn't be no more than maybe half an hour or so. There aren't a large amount of cards in here. This one was actually quite expensive because this is a 2018-19 season. It's only 6 packs. There's only 4 cards per pack. So in this particular collection, I'm looking for certain kind of cards that are based on things like prisms. These are from the recent opening I just did recently. So I like prism cards and stuff like that in there. So I'm looking for certain specific ones, and also just tracking down a few that I can just have as a part of the collection. So let's see. Paul, how's it going? Welcome from London. I'm doing kind of an earlier morning, not early morning, but earlier in the day stream today. Typically, I do a lot of my streams in the evenings. So I usually get a larger crowd of people that are more local that are up. So a lot of the international people, in Europe and whatnot, probably wouldn't be seeing this kind of stuff. But seeing the fact that I'm doing it at 11 a.m. right now, and 9 hours ahead, and it's not too late in Europe. I might get a few more people that are kind of international. We'll see. Yeah, so Herax is also saying live in a time zone where you guys can watch that right now. Let's see. And John is also saying that the Dynamic Bible has been very helpful for you, which I'm glad to hear. Updates on the next book will hopefully be out sometime early next year, I would say. But the second book I'm planning to have released by summer, I'm hoping, of next year. There are some other talks and rumblings of things that I'm kind of getting back into in terms of discussions of books that I want to make for, I would say, 2023 year and then 2024 year. So we'll see what happens. Awesome. Welcome. Great, Steve. Thank you. Enjoy your class. So I only have 6 packs to open up. And just for a little bit of shifting and moving it around, I'm going to put the top pack on the bottom. And we'll see what we get in here. And then we'll get into these sketchbooks in just a moment. So I'm going to put this also in the screen so everybody can see it. And you guys are welcome to ask questions. discuss things as I am opening things up. For myself personally, just kind of seeing what's in here. So this particular pack said it had, or box had green cards, but this is a purple one and rookie too. Oh man. So this first pack is pretty much hitting exactly what I wanted. This is a player, I talked about this in the last stream, that I've been following with the Blazers. The Blazers, an NBA team that I'm following at the moment. And this kid is going nuts. So I've been looking for his card. And I got one in the last opening, but it was a base card. It was this one here. This is what we got last time. So having this one on our purple prism, I want to see the centering on this. It's no number, but that's nice. Silver can't base more, and this is a base card. From Greece, awesome. And then also from India. Welcome, you guys. Again, it's nice to have people from international crowds asking questions. And you know, I've been teaching for over a decade, and in the last 5 years, I've done a lot of international traveling and workshops and classes all over. So having to be able to interact with people all over the world has been a huge benefit in terms of my growth, but also just to get a sense of how educational systems and just general interest within people all over the world, I guess, are kind of like, you know, where they're going. It gives me better insight. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. It gives me better insight towards, you know, how the world works and also what educationally people are looking for. So having people international here right now has always been great. Card emergent. Base cards just kind of put off to the side. So I'm looking for these kind of prisms and rookie cards. And again, like I said, questions are welcome. Anything you guys want to talk about. Rookie. Phenom. Yao Ming. Nice. For those of you that are joining in right now, I'll be doing a sketchbook tour in just a moment. And I maybe or will be sketching as well too. Here's a Kevin Garnett base. Jeremy Lin. That was a kind of a crazy moment for him. Nice. Put that off to the side as well. Just 2 more packs. This is a small box, but I got pretty much exactly what I wanted from this one. So I'm quite satisfied with this opening. Rookie card silver. Jaron Jackson rookie. Karl Malone silver. Yeah, unfortunate for Lin. That guy was not treated very well during the time there. I think he went to the G leagues for a bit. I think he tried to make his way back into the NBA. But I think he settled into a lot of the Chinese leagues out there. So we have an autograph card right here. That thick one right in there, that's an autograph card, I believe. So I'm going to take out the bottom one. So in these packs, you can get signed cards, autograph cards, or it might be a jersey card. So you actually can get jersey cutouts from these as well too. So this is the Cavs, Tristan Thompson. Yeah. So these are game-worn jersey pieces that they would cut out and put them in the card, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that was it. Awesome. So I just wanted to open up a few of those, but the card that I really wanted, this is a short opening. Right here. And this one I'm going to sleeve up as well too. That's the one I wanted. Give me a moment. Viewers are saying about the connecting of base forms. I'm glad that it was useful for you in your approach towards your education and drawing and sketching, especially on the ellipses stuff. Keep at it. They are crazy looking these days. Nothing compared to what we had or what I had, you know, growing up in the 90s and, you know, late 80s, I would say. I used to collect a lot of baseball cards, actually, when I was a kid. Speaking of which, I have some of those over here. So I was a really big Nolan Ryan fan when I was a kid. These These cards I found at a vintage, what is that? An antique store, and they had books and books of cards just sitting there. So I went through them and just picked out cards that I just liked, certain players. The Cal Ripken. So I found these, picked them up for like a couple bucks. This is what they used to look like, right? This is the kind of cards I grew up with. But today, cards are kind of crazy. That's the one. Awesome. Okay, so let me just put these away real quickly. I'm gonna save up this one as well. These three. Actually, this might not even fit. I need to get a special one for this one. Carl and do I drink black coffee? No, I don't mind drinking coffee. I drink it maybe a few times in a week, not that often. I prefer like cappuccinos, macchiatos, lattes, but I don't drink it black. Yeah, exactly. The big binders and stuff like that, which I still have actually. A lot of the sports cards I had when I was a kid, those are gone now. I don't know what happened to them. I still have binders of my old Marvel cards, but a lot of my sports cards they like disappeared. When you grow up as a kid, you have all these things, and as you move away from home, parents start to select what they want to keep and throw out, right? So as I went back visit home, I would ask about, hey, where did this thing go? Where did that thing go? And parents like, I don't know. So either sold them or give them away. Oh, so not disappointed, but it's more of it's unfortunate where I lost a couple things, especially like even like video game stuff, because back in the '90s and stuff, especially coming from like Asian families, they have no sense of value when it comes to stuff like this, especially things of digital mediums, uh, specifically video games. So I used to own a Sega Saturn back in the day, and there was a video game that I had bought brand new. It was on a casing, and it was a game called Guardian Heroes, and I had the original Sega Saturn version of that, in really really good condition too. And unfortunately, they gave away all those like Nintendo games and Sega Saturn games to people that just wanted them, and those things are actually worth quite a bit now because it's so hard to find in the collector market. So I wish I kept those. I'm gonna put this aside for a moment. Okay. A couple of the questions here. Have you ever made your own card art? Had some ideas popped in your head? Well, that's a thought I had talked about in the last stream, and I actually just recently got contacted by Upper Deck. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Upper Deck. A couple of weeks ago, they wanted me to do some Marvel stuff as well too, sketch cards. But I'm trying to see if I want to do it or not because the pay is not that great. Um, oh wow, yeah, parents selling old collections of stuff. Yeah, it's difficult. Did I watch the new Tales of Jedi? I did, and I finished it. I thought it was quite fun. These recent series from Disney Plus that doing a lot of Star Wars things and Marvel stuff, I honestly enjoy. It just kind of fills in small little pockets of the universe and the world that is always kind of interesting. It's not super heavy, nor really even that necessary, but it is fun. And especially with the Star Wars thing, it does obviously flesh out the world even more for people that are big fans, especially if they're following the Ashoka Tano stuff and um, and Dooku stuff. So they like that kind of stuff a lot, and I like I said I enjoyed it. Do I think the animation workshop is a good school for someone wanting to become a concept artist designer, or should one continue taking courses online? It's an interesting question. So, Harax is asking about a school based in Denmark, a place called Viborg, Denmark, and I've done workshops there twice. It's a cool school. It's a really interesting place, but I will say it has a lot of its core values within animation and storytelling. So, especially even things like graphic novels, it's a good school to go to because their student body is very driven, very diverse. The teacher faculty, there's a core group, but they also bring in a lot of people internationally to do things with them. They've been doing things mostly online, but I believe they're going to bring more people back in person. But I haven't worked with them in a couple of years. But in my minimal experience of being at the animation workshop, I actually really enjoyed my time there quite a bit. And there are some notable people that work in the industry that have graduated from that place. There are game people that have come from it. In Denmark, there's a couple of small game studios that do hire people from that location, and so I do know that it exists. But in terms of the quality of it, I don't necessarily have an opinion, mainly because I didn't teach in that department. I was in the graphic novel storytelling department. So a bit of research would probably help. Obviously, in communication with them, if you can get a hold of anybody who's gone to that school and works in the local areas, especially with where you're living, perhaps is maybe what I would also do as well too. But the animation workshop is a really interesting, unique school based on how they build their environment and system educationally, and also whatnot in terms of their formats and what going in there. But I think it's really cool. It's unique in the sense of educational backgrounds. Am I going to be doing any workshops in India in the future? Well, it's all dependent upon any schools that are out there. Would I go independently if I had the money, to formulate these kind of things? But I would need to collaborate, with either schools or event locations or possibly partners and stuff that know locations maybe in India. Would it be like in Mumbai or somewhere else like that? I don't know. But it'd be great. I certainly wouldn't mind coming out to India. I've had a lot of dealing with students in the past, from online to even locally, who have come from India, who have been good students. And so I do know that there's a strong community of people, of artists that are out there that are interested in this field. But in terms of facilities and locations or venues that do this kind of stuff, I don't know. So it kind of depends on you even like contacting local people within like schools, events, to see if there are any programs that are looking for things like this to happen. I would say one of the better ways of it to happen is to like me being in contact with companies like game studios, animation studios that would potentially have the funding to be able to bring instructors or artists from international to come to do workshops, which is what I've done in the past, right? So John's saying, yeah, your dad had a bunch of classic baseball cards, which I'm sure are worth quite a bit and rare, and your grandmother threw out. I'm going to be doing a bit of a sketch tour, and as I continue answering questions, I'll give you guys an idea of what these books are. And I'll be sketching in this one for a little bit to kind of finish off this stream session. The opening of the cards is kind of an entryway to kind of open things up. It's also just a hobby of mine, so I always want to do that in front of just a video. But we'll take a look at some of these sketchbooks. We have 3 of them right now, and they're kind of ordered in this direction. This was one of the first accordion book I ever put together. Not put together, drew in. This was kind of a random find. I don't honestly even remember where I got the sketchbook. It was like some kind of Japanese stationery store, somewhere in LA, I think. But I can't remember where. And I don't know the name of the company that made this. There's obviously a branding, which is Toho Studios, but this is for Godzilla, But in terms of who made the sketchbook, I have no idea. It's an interesting book, mainly because every other accordion book I ever found uses a very specific kind of paper, which is much thicker and cardstock, and it's a watercolor paper. So it's a very thick paper here. Okay, and this particular one is also glued in the center. So how they make these books is that it's a very long strip of watercolor paper, and then they glue it right here. They glue it. So as they glue it, you're able to get the full extension of the pages. So you're looking at about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 pages, and then front and back you double that. But then you can also do the other side. So it's not the most amount of pages, but you still get a decent amount of real estate space. The difference of this one is the sizing. Most of the accordion books I've found are either really tiny, like pocket size, or a little bit larger, like this one. This is just a weird sizing in general. Like I don't know if it would fit under any sort of like template, but it's a weird size. But this one also is bizarre in the fact that it's double layered. So it's double layered like this. But within each spine, it's connected somehow. Like I don't know how it's like glued. It's glued. So these are in the individual spines right here in the center are glued, but in between they're double layered. But the paper of this one is not watercolor paper. This is a rice paper. I can tell by the actual fibers of the paper. It's a little bit silky, slightly shiny, but the fibering on that is very specific to a surface of rice paper. And so it's actually relatively thin on one side. And the other inside of it is actually really rough fibrous as well too. So you can tell by the nature of the fiber itself what kind of paper it is. So this is a rice paper. So it's really interesting. Um, I would say that this is probably handmade, not machine made. Maybe I could be wrong, but either way, this is one I found 2 years ago, and I took about a year to fill this one up, and filled this, front and back. So this one was actually a really interesting and rewarding experience because I've never drawn in an accordion book before. So what is the benefit and what is the con of accordion books? Well, the benefit is that it really challenges you. I don't know if that's a benefit or a con for most people, but I find it as a con, or a pro, that is, right? In terms of the challenge of having this continuous stream, because you can deal with it as like a normal book, right? Page one, page two, page three, page four, but of course the beauty of an accordion book is that you can open it up, so it becomes one continuous image, right? So for most people, not most, I think for a lot of people that would pick up accordion books for the first time, they probably would treat it a bit more simplistically as an actual book like this, where they would just kind of go from page to page to page and treat it as individual sections. So even as you open it up, you'll see the individual sections as independently as they are. They're not going to be fully connected. But for me, I already knew from the get-go as an accordion book, I didn't want it to feel like that. So as I drew one page and the other, I always work on a accordion book like this. I open it up with a couple of pages extended, so I can always see then the continuation of the pages. So I would start with one and kind of connect it together. So then, how do I then draw inside these things? Well, it's all based on thematic elements, based on things of subject matter or themes that I'm interested in. It could be based on figurative work or animals or fantasy work or sci-fi, and I fluctuate based on interests of where I want to go towards things. And then from there, I transition those elements, sometimes very kind of gradually or sometimes more immediately. Everything here is done straight pen. The kind of pens I was using in this particular book is the Sakura Pigma felt tip brush pen, but I can also use like fountain pens and stuff like that in here as well too. Um, but yeah, this one started off. This was a 2021 year, 21, yeah, not 2 years ago, a year ago. Um, and started off with just typically if I have a brand new sketchbook, this one, and I never use it, a lot of times fish are my kind of go-tos because they're the easiest things to kind of start with, essentially, for myself. And then I just kept going. And I think one of the key things as just starting off with an accordion book, a recommendation I would say if anybody plans to use one of these books in the future, is play with scaling a lot. Scaling of the actual drawings, going from like small to then larger to then small, then larger, kind of fluctuating the scaling of the sketchbook's individual pieces in here. If they're all statically the same size, then it becomes extremely monotonous and mundane. So as an individual page, it may not seem as drastic because you have a singular focal point and you have a couple of pieces sitting around it. A focal point with a couple of smaller pieces. But it's the idea that, again, when you are able to open it up as an accordion book, you have a full, kind of spread. You want to be able to have a lot of visual dynamics and also the overlaps and the overlays as they go one on top of another, and they flow into one piece or another one. So we use the bigger pieces as anchor points, right? Anchor points, and we use the smaller ones as a way to stitch and to bind the images together, essentially. That's how I'm thinking about it. So these smaller sketches, think of it as thread to bind the bigger pieces that are focal points on the individual sheets. So as either a large piece of paper or a accordion book, which is essentially a large piece of paper but divided into sections or folds. That's how I'm still thinking of it. I have these larger pieces, but components of the smaller ones I can intertwine, essentially. Let's see. Is there a release date for Denim Bubble 2? Nope, but sometime next year. Let's see. I think practicing on a paper roll is more relaxing than a sketchbook, and you can see my changes more intuitively. It's interesting that you mentioned that Halo gear. It's kind of similar in a sense of like, when I was in school at Art Center, we wouldn't, at times of like brainstorming sessions, we would come together in a class and we'd work on projects, and sometimes we'd group together. And we'd be working on large tables. And on a large table, we'd have rolls of the brown like butcher paper. And so we roll them out into one long sheet, and we'd all be drawing on top of them. So we're able to actually get this long extension of work as like ideas and brainstorm design kind of ideas as well too. But of course, as a communal kind of effect of drawing. This one is being an independent. It kind of just fluctuates from subject to subject. So I'll go from like the observation as well too is brought in here. So a lot of these things are drawn observationally as I'm looking at like architecture or statues, and this is at a time when I was actually in Paris. So this is well before last year then, because these particular things that I'm drawing here are from the time when I was in the Versailles, Chateau de Versailles. I was with my mom. I took my mom to Paris. This is right before the shutdown then. This is actually a couple of years. For some reason, I thought it was like a year ago, but this is actually a couple of years ago. That means I worked on this a number of years ago, and I didn't have an accordion book for a while. I think it's because I couldn't find this again. So then I found these books over here, the red ones, and that was a recent find from last year. So this is from a couple of years ago, actually. So, again, fluctuating from, see how that transition worked out here. This is all observational studies. Studies from Versailles, statues, paintings, statues. And then I saw crows. So I saw drawing birds. And the birds turned to dinosaurs, So it transitioned into the skeletal bone structure, skulls, into dinosaurs. Something more prehistoric again, kind of this weird caveman skull thing over here. And then still kind of maintaining the historical, but then also I switched gears because I started watching a documentary on the Civil War, which is why this happened. So, and then, weird transitions happen from there. I go back to Godzilla. Why that big shift? I don't know. My brain tends to kind of think about different things as they go along, right? But these are from toys. I went to a Japanese, again, toy store. And I saw this Godzilla piece. This is when I was in Austria. Because I was looking at armor pieces and armaments from the 14th century. This is in Graz, Austria. That's the end of that book. But then I flip it the other way around and it keeps going. So this is side B. So in side B, I completely alternate the subject matter and we go into like mechanical. But it stems from this. From the armor set, right? Classical to then a sci-fi version of like armor. So it still transitions all the way through. Paulo McKay, you're absolutely right. The pandemic definitely altered my perception of time. It seemed like it was just yesterday, but 2 years had passed. Oh my gosh. So this book is a bit older. Again, this is when I was in Austria. Yeah, I remember this piece here too. So this is at a museum I went to. Not a museum, this is a palace. This is the Eggenberg Palace in Graz. I was doing a workshop there in Austria. This is the last year, or 2019 year, right before pandemic. Armor set again. This is Lightbox of 2019. Lightbox. So this is the first Lightbox event that happened, 2019. Transition again, armor set piece is the classical dragons, large, small scale. All right, it's big scale in terms of the scope, but small scale in terms of the visual imagery. Dave Durango is asking, any tips on intersections, form intersections, driving you insane? Observation is key. Don't try to just imagine out of your head. Intersecting forms are things that you're not going to be able to actually problem solve because you don't know what's happening. You got to be able to see it. So observation is incredibly important. This piece right here, I'm going to take off. This comes from the Wacom, my Cintiq. Okay, this piece has an intersecting form on it. It's got a cylinder with an open cylinder here. The line that divides that section right there, that's the stuff you want to look at. So I observe this cylinder here, that cylinder there, and I draw from observation. So don't try to make it up, especially in the beginning. Find things around you. If I find another example, let me see if I can find one. Not this. I mean, this is a piece from a mask made by Machine 56. So you'll find some interesting stuff on here, parts and pieces. Intersecting parts here. Seam lines there, or divisions in negative forms. Or this thing. This is from my Oculus. The handle. Looking at this particular form, with the intersection of that form there. Observation, No, don't do that, Dave. Do it eventually with practice, but observe more things initially, and then go to your head. Let's see. The question from Carlo is: are there still some objects characters you still struggle to draw? Not really. I enjoy pretty much drawing anything now. Have I in the past? Sure. I would say drawing young people, kids, were very difficult because the proportion is so different. Pillow's asking, how do I balance your finances so you can travel to so many places? How do I deal with meals, housing when I travel? Well, here's the thing. Uh, when it comes to that kind of stuff, you have to understand it's a working situation. It's not leisure, right? So when I travel to, let's say I go to Austria or Paris or Australia, New Zealand, or wherever I go for workshops and whatnot, most of those locations are inviting me. Okay, so they're hiring me to come out to do a workshop in a class. So they have to cover certain expenses and costs on my end. Some of them will pay me, some of them will not. Some of them will cover expenses of flight, stay, food, maybe not food, flight and stay, right? So hotels, whatever the case is. Everything else I'll usually cover. Um, Usually some of those locations will pay me, especially if it's a school, but others won't, but they'll cover every other expense, right? So it's all dependent on negotiation with who you're working with, client-wise. On my own, would I do this? Well, no, I wouldn't pay out of my pocket to go to a location to work, right? Uh, so it's the same thing if I'm a freelancer, and even if it's like local to LA. Let's say I'm traveling to like a high school, not even a high school really, because you don't have the budget. But let's say like a company, because I did a workshop, let's say like at Amazon, which I've done. So I would do a 3 day, kind of workshop at Amazon Game Studios in Irvine. So the driving that I would do from the gas expenses, food, if I'm staying somewhere, they would have to cover. So this is where them working as a client and hiree is what the situation is. If I'm traveling leisurely, a lot of that stuff I also write off as taxes because it's a part of my own personal work or research. Because when I travel as part of leisure, I'm also experiencing it in a way to gain as a part of experience to apply for my work. So it can be leisure, but it can also be intertwined as a working research trip. Um, but as you become, let's say, more established in freelance work or contract work, these kind of things you'll start to pick up on and know more of, as you have to deal with certain finances and control behind that. As a full-time artist, a lot of these things are not as readily available, especially in terms of write-off and taxes. But as a full-time artist, you can still be invited to do workshops and classes and whatnot, and they could pay for those expenses. But I'm independent on everything I do, so whatever I actually have to like, honestly, even like these sports cards I get, right? I can write these off as a part of taxes because I can use them as part of research and study, which I actually do. I will study from them as poses and drawings, and I create my own versions of characters and cards as well too. And it's a part of my work research. So I know it's leisure; it's part of my hobby, but it's still intertwined with what I do with work, and it's obviously produced. David asking, do I only do sports or basketball cards? No, I do Marvel cards as well. Like I actually sleeved up these ones a while back. These were from a bunch of Marvel cards I sleeved up. Some of them I wanted to get graded. A bunch of those. Uh, Keshav is asking, will this stream be stored in my channel? Yes. So usually if I'm streaming on YouTube, it goes immediately back up into my stream. Or on my channel, that is. If it's on Twitch, it's independently there, and then it goes into my YouTube about a week afterwards. A couple other questions. Coming up with ideas for illustrations from this Tesh. How can one start to weave a narrative into their drawings? Well, obviously, pulling from your own life is a big part of it. You know, I think the experiences of like what I'm showing you right now in these sketchbooks. You know, is there any sort of like strong narrative in here? I mean, not necessarily. But could a singular image say something through some sort of action or scenario or a moment of their adventure? Sure. And do I pull that directly from out of my head? A lot of times they're gonna be pulled from things I've observed, from like other movies or comics or stories, or especially like experiences of things I've seen in my own life. Now, I'm not saying this is something I've seen in my own life, but I'm saying, the other travels of stuff, going to a location and seeing people, paintings, culture, history, can be part of historical story, which I can use in terms of intertwined towards illustrations I want to generate my own, right? So they're interconnected. The idea of living and seeing the world around you, how can be pulled. This is all back into mechanical stuff. I wanted to end on this as like mech stuff because it started with that initially. So starting with all these like, you know, helmets and mechs and stuff like that, and then I kind of want to end it with more of those. Turned into like a 5-point perspective. There's something similar to the demo I just did at Proco. That's the first book I had done. Here's the second book, and then once we get to the finish of the second book, we'll draw on the third one. So this one started this year. So that means from this first accordion book, which I found in 2019, I didn't start another accordion book until 2022. This one I found at an art store made by a company called Etcher. Etcher, here, accordion. They're based in Australia. And they were initially known, I worked with them years ago because they used to make those satchel bags, which are pretty cool, but I think they stopped making them, and now they have mostly sketchbooks. So, this is my sticker character I made up. I make a few stickers for shows and Comic Cons and stuff like that. So this one, I started off with Godzilla again, actually, funnily enough. I think I started there mainly because I remembered what I had done with this one. There was a Godzilla on the cover of this accordion book. I was like, oh, I want to draw Godzilla again. So this one I started off with Godzilla. And I created a bunch of like monsters and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I saw a bunch of like, you know, comics and recent releases of Ultraman that are coming out again. So I started playing a lot with Ultraman poses and whatnot here. So John Doe had asked about the faces that were drawn from this particular book on the previous one. Were they done from observation? So the paintings and the sculptures I would go to visit like museums, yes, they were done on location. But if they're like actual people, you know, do I draw people on location? I do at times, absolutely. Not a lot of you guys may know this guy, Tekka Man. This is the Tekka Man that I grew up with as a kid. And then doing a bunch of like arm wrestling stuff. And John Brzenk. Those of you that are interested in the world of arm wrestling and sports will know that guy. I really enjoy drawing this kind of stuff. The arm wrestling thing. This specifically, arm wrestling as a subject matter. Mainly because you will find probably there's several topics of interaction between characters and figures that are very difficult, in my opinion, to sketch. As a study or as an illustration or as to whatever you want to do. And I would say arm wrestling is one of the toughest ones. Other ones would be things like, you know, wrestling. That kind of stuff is difficult too because you have a lot of bodies contorting and moving into each other. But arm wrestling specifically is difficult, mainly because you're limited to such a specific region of interaction. Where like wrestling, you have the whole body. You can like wrestle and like, you know, tie together and do like headlocks and, you know, pulls and pushes and that kind of stuff. But with you're using the entire body interacting with them. But with arm wrestling, it's right there only where they're interacting, but the entire body still has to show this idea of pull and push, and trying to convey that strain and intensity of torque is super hard. When you try to do a lot of arm wrestling poses, most of the times what people end up drawing is where the two figures are equal. So their arms come together as a triangle, and they stay locked as a half and half. And when I see a lot of arm wrestling drawing in the sketches, typically that's what ends up happening. Because that's what I used to do. Most of the arm wrestling drawings that I will do is usually equalize of strength. But I want to be able to show a push and a pull, a dominance of one and a weakness of another. Which is what happens a lot of times in arm wrestling. There's a back and forth that goes into it. So when you get the body posturing, where leverage goes, where the legs are positioned into, where the arms are connected to, the strain, the twist, and the contorting of that, it's so hard to draw here. Challenging, but fun. Tom was asking, you managed to get a copy of the Dynamite Bible all the way in Belgium. Nice. Glad you got it out there, man. And thanks for the support. How do I draw organic forms and switch to mechanical? Observation again, right? I draw things that are based in the reality of the world around us, from insects to animals and to people, and then I create from them. But also existing things that we have in our properties, Gamera to Guyver over here, right? These are existing comics and movies and stuff that I also observe, and then I also can create from my own. Mechanical things no different. So this particular spread right here, this was done observationally. This was on the deck of the USS Midway in San Diego, a battleship, right? So I was drawing this sitting there underneath the airplane wing. So I sketched this part out in perspective. Next to me was the Super Rani artist, Dong Ho Kim. Dong Ho Kim was with me. We were sketching together. And as I started sketching this out, I included a mech thing on there. Obviously, that thing didn't exist on the platform, but I drew it in there anyway. Then I drew a bunch of monsters in the background to transition from the camera over to the side. These are just people that are walking around, but as I said, I was there on location drawing this. This is about maybe 20 minutes of sketching. And I finished off another observation. So I was looking at a helicopter, a Chinook helicopter. And so that was done observationally as well too. So that ended that side, and I flip it to the other end, right? So a sketch like this is also done observationally. So we were at dinner at Comic-Con. This is this year's Comic-Con. So that's why the other Super Ani, artist was there. It was me, Dong Ho Kim, and a bunch of other artists were there as well too. It was Andy Park, and Tron, me, and Eliza. And it just continues to, again, like I said, for some reason I got into the world of like fish and then horses, and I thought about horses, and I went to the Mustang because I saw this Mustang from observation too. I drew this at the dealership. My car was getting an oil change, so I drew this car there. And then from the horses, it went to mythology. I went to like a centaur, then I went to like a chariot. This is all in my head, out of my head. This is a Cerberus, out of my head. So it goes from observation to inspiration to then application, right? In a lot of ways. Zeno's asking, do you think I can do a dynamic demo on wolves? You know what? Actually, I might actually draw a sketch based on a werewolf today because I want to kind of keep it within the Halloween theme a little bit. So at the end of all this tour, I might draw something that's more monster based. Keshav is asking then, should I fit into what a company wants or explore and develop my style and storytelling and find the exact fit, or start something on my own? I mean, at the early parts of your training, it's first understanding your fundamental skill sets, right? Which is just having a tool. Think of like a hammer and screwdriver, and they have certain functions, right? Based on those functionalities of understanding, you can then start to apply them in different ways or manipulate them in some ways. Then based on the application where it's applied to, right? Are you building a house? Or are you building a restaurant? Are you building a furniture, right? There's different things you can create from that stuff. In our field also, it can be applied towards animation or graphic novels or whatever the case is. And based on where industry you go towards, sometimes having a style of your own can make a difference. Other times, really being able to adapt to a style really makes a difference. So you have to choose a certain avenue of a career first and then decide upon how you want to apply to that, right? Have I gotten to the AI debate yet? I didn't know there was a debate. I know there's a lot of yelling back and forth. Doesn't sound very smart debate, in my opinion. But do I avoid it? To some degree, because I don't think the conversation really works online. I like talking about it in person. I think it's fascinating. Um, do I have thoughts on the whole AI stuff? Sure. Doesn't anybody, right? Do I find it threatening or scary? No. Do I welcome it? Absolutely. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Doesn't really matter, right? Because I don't do it. Uh, do I not do it because I think it's a bad thing? Again, no. I don't do it mainly because it's not of interest to me. But I think people that do it and benefit from it, great, fantastic. Do it for your own thing. But it's not going to affect me in any way. It doesn't take away my work. It doesn't affect the way I produce things. But if it helps others in some ways, and if it's proven in a more kind of like uh, in a manner in which it legitimately ups their skills, fantastic. But of course, there's a lot of arguments to that. But that's where I'm sure what you're talking about debate wise is coming in. But based on that, again, like I said, my opinion on it is just an opinion. It doesn't really matter that much because at the end of the day, what you should be doing is finding out yourself by trying it if you're interested. Build off of the curiosity, right? I'm not really that curious to actually work with AI systems. I'm interested in seeing how other people use it. So I've had students who used AI and kind of play with it. I thought, oh, it's kind of an interesting process. And I would have them, go through the whole process of actually adjusting and making it part of their own work, where it's no longer just a remnant of what it was from the AI piece. But I think it's fascinating. Yeah, but Donnie, that makes no sense. I understand there's a fear of it, but I don't have a fear of it. I don't think that's going to take away a job from what I would do, right? But they're saying, well, what if it can generate a piece of art just like this in your style, right? Wouldn't that take away work from you? I still don't think so because there's room enough in this world to be able to generate your thing, and maybe a machine will do its own thing as well too. That can look similar to what you're doing, but don't we as people do the same thing also? Don't I draw in a very similar kind of fashion like other people, and other people draw like me as well too, right? because we all look and we compute and process that information by visual information. We then express it onto the page. So this is not just originally me, right? This is built off of the shoulders of many people from the historical past that are seen from antiquity art to classical art to contemporary art to people that I'm friends of today. Um, what I say then, I'm a creator of this thing. I'm able to uniquely fashion things together by the inspirations of stuff that I've seen in the past. Every artist does this. Every single artist, right? Uh, there's no way for you to actually generate something visually if you've never seen something before, right? Uh, but again, these are just opinions of my own. So is AI art really doing the same thing? I mean, kind of. Are they stealing it? I mean, that's another whole debate in that situation. Um, but here's another thing about this: is that you can't stop it. You know, you can't stop it. So the idea is, well, how do we bring it into our world as a balance of thing, right? But the more you try to fight something against it because you feel like it's wrong, again, it's still only your opinion, and you're not going to be able to actually, change the minds of others, and nor is it your responsibility either. You should just be focusing on what you want to do. Just comes as simple as that. And so why be afraid when something you feel like is going to take your work, where that's going to be the same mentality of someone being an immigrant coming to the U.S. saying they're going to steal our jobs. That doesn't happen, right? There's enough room in this world for everybody to do the things they want to do, right? Um, so I don't know. I don't have those fears, and I don't necessarily understand, nor I can even see it in their same level for people that have that same kind of fear, because I don't approach the world in that way. Anything from things like technology to people, right? Because that mentality of people can come into mind, which is like young kids today are being trained with much more skill sets faster than I had 20 years ago. So I could have the fear where younger people are going to take a job away from me. But is that really going to happen? I don't think so. Because there's enough room for young people to come in to do the things they want to do and work in the things they want to work in, and also for me to do the things I want to do, right? There's no stealing. There's a growing of the community of art and design, and there's enough room for it because there's an infinite amount of room for it, right? Creativity can't be contained, and it's also subjective as to like what you think it is. Is it only based on the individual person generating it, or to say that a computer is not creative? Okay, maybe not right now because it's just a tool, and that's the confusion as well too. Like the labeling of the word AI art, I don't think really makes sense because it's not actual artificial intelligence. This thing is not sentient. It's not alive, generating these things out on its own. It's a computer program that the person behind it is then generating of their collection of their own. So it's the user responsibility based on how they either abuse it or use it in a way to really benefit them, right? But that's in anything. Anything that you use can be abused in ways that doesn't really benefit you. Um, Brett is saying, you think most of the pushback is on ARR is making sure people are paid for what the ARR is taking from, just like with any new tech, we need to bring up rules around it. Well, that's the thing also is like, if I, let's say, drew this from an observation of a photograph. I mean, let's say even this image here are of actual people, okay? And let's say it was a photograph that was taken by somebody else, and I drew from it, right? And I drew from that photograph, and I drew these things. That photograph was not my own. Should I pay that photographer, to be able to use their images? So that's that gray line. There is no black and white there. There's a yes and no in that situation. If that photograph was taken by another artist, right, that's their piece of photography. They own that work because they're the ones that took the photograph, right? Now, as I copy from that photograph, if I did a one-to-one copy and I took ownership of that image, saying I did that actual work, and I give no credit to that photographer, nor did I pay them, then obviously that doesn't work because you're taking from somebody else's actual piece. But if I take that piece of photography and I drew from it, but I changed and altered it, twisted it to enough of a percentage where you can see the inspiration from the photograph, but it's no longer that photograph. That happens all the time. In every single piece of work of illustration, design, there's an element of this, an element of it to a certain percentage, more or less. If you think about AR art, yes, it is taking images directly from the web, for sure. But is it blending it with hundreds and hundreds of other artists? It is, right? So at the end of the day, how do you actually divide out which artist it's pulling from, and also then which images that's really using? Of course, it can maybe document that through all the coding and information that's in there. You can go in there and actually isolate all those things. And do you then pay those individual people? Well, how do I even do that? Right? What if that art is just on the web and you put it on Facebook and you didn't monetize it, you didn't license it, right? How do you do that? What do you do in that situation? It's only taking information that's only out there, right? So it's the same thing. What we do, we just look at stuff, we look at the information, we're pulling from that as well too. But like I said, it's a difficult thing because if I directly copy from something that is licensed, is something that is owned by somebody, and I own it for myself, then that's a similar thing of plagiarism, right? So you can't do that. But if I pull from it as inspiration and I generate something of my own from it, then you know, are you not allowed to do this? Well, people do it all the time, right? Go back to this sketchbook. Where's that one piece? Back here. This is a piece of photography taken from a different artist. The study from Dylan Golby Photography. This photograph was not my own, okay? I looked at that photograph and I then drew from it. Is that wrong? Well, there's a whole side to this which people also are not seeing, which is if that piece of AI art or this piece of art was monetized, if I sold this as a print, okay, and I sold it for like $10 a print, and I said, well, this is also my image, and I didn't give any credit to Dylan Golby, well, that's a problem, right? Now, if I took that image and I then changed it dramatically, I infused it with a bunch of other things, it was just a form of inspiration. Do I have to still pay that person? Again, that's that blurry line. And there's a certain percentage amount of change you should be able to make. If it's very close to the original image still, then you run into problems, right? But who judges all that kind of stuff? And that's why the thing is like it's all based on personal judgment, user responsibility, and you could be potentially caught on certain things, but other things may not even be that important. You can kind of get away with it because, again, everybody else is. But again, I'm not selling this, right? I just do it as a personal study. I still give credit to the person who actually took the photograph. But that whole monetization is where the issue comes from. If people are playing with a bunch of AI art and generating their own images just for study and for play to produce things, yeah, but then if you're doing it for a company, it's the company's responsibility to be able to go in there and isolate what's going on and what are they pulling from, how much they're really twisting and changing and adjusting. Is it becoming inspiration or is it a direct copy, right? It's not easy, in terms of what's going on right now. And so these are just based on my own, not opinions, but based on thoughts about how the industry works. It's the same concept of fan art. If I went to a Comic-Con convention and I was selling prints of Wolverine from X-Men, right? And I drew my version of Wolverine and I monetized that print and sold it. Don't I have to pay Marvel and Disney to be able to use their character to draw that piece of art? Yes and no, right? Because if I sold millions of those prints, right, and I was a wildly popular artist, you could potentially run into a lot of problems. But if it's a fan art and I'm doing my take on that character, you might be able to get away with it. But also, if I'm a relatively small-time artist, I'm only generating like 30, 40 prints, they're not going to care. They're not going to touch you, So there's a lot of like potential alleyways and where things can go in that situation. So it'd be the same thing with AI art, How much of those images are being twisted and altered creatively by the artist who's using them to generate a piece of their art using AI systems and programs that could be enough of a shift where they can claim as a piece of art for themselves. Or is it so close to the original things where then we have to kind of be careful about that? Is the artist who's even generating it big enough and producing enough of them to even warrant an issue? If they're monetizing it and selling it in millions of copies of things, well, then maybe somebody will have to do something about that, right? So there's so many layers to this. But the problem is people are labeling it as a black and white. You can or you can't. And that's an issue because you can't do this. It's just so many subtleties and nuances behind this based on even things that we talked about now. Fan art to inspiration art, creativity, right? What we're pulling from and how we use it. It comes back down to the responsibility of the person using it, right? So eventually the people that are abusing those things, karma, it's gonna come back at them at some point. But all of us, to some degree, do this, whether through the actual AI program or not, through even just drawing and sketching from observation. We're doing this all the time, right? Our brains are computers. We're amalgamation of constructs of things that are just mixing stuff together, of stuff we see from a photograph to observations in the real world and things that we watch in a movie or comics and graphic novels. We infuse all of it together, whether we even consciously do it or not. Sometimes it's subconscious. It just feeds into it without us even realizing it. How many times have you drawn something and somebody says, that looks like something we've seen before, but you didn't intend to do this? You just put it in there because that's where you're just inspired by without even knowing it. Happens all the time, right? So for people to be afraid of that is why I'm so confused, because this is what happens in our industry all the time since the beginning, especially in the advent of technology. Uh, when technology came into place, we started to get things like Photoshop, and then now, in the last couple of years, we're doing things like 3D concept art, and we're also doing things like photo bashing techniques. And photo bashing is another similar kind of concept of what AI art does, except we're the ones doing it, right? I pull from photographs and images online. I'm the one picking them, and I'm infusing them together. Now, depending on the percentage of how much I paint over it and change it, or to just leaving it the way it was, is the argument. Um, if I change it enough to the point where you can't see what it used to be, you're gonna be fine because it's no longer what it was. But if I take it and leave it just as a photo bash and don't really give any credit to it, then you can still see those individual images. Oh, that photograph, I know where you took that from. Oh, that image, and you know that from that piece. Well, then it's a problem, right? Um, I mean, yeah. So, like I said, use the responsibility as it comes down to it. So then that's a big issue. Then, well, what about the people that are abusing it but not aware of it? Who are those kind of people? Most likely untrained young people. Coming out of school, they're trying to get something done, and they just want to put things together at a high level of quality. They might turn to that. Are they doing it because they're malicious on those things? Probably not. Most definitely not. It's because they're untrained. They're uncertain about how to approach those things. But that's a learning process. But they're also students, which is why I would allow it, because it's a part of training. It's not a part of them actually trying to monetize it and turn it into a job. But they have to learn, right? By doing it and then having some people correcting on things at the fundamental levels of stuff and to understand how to infuse that at a more proper level. So what it comes to is user responsibility, educational level. But as I said, when it gets into the hands of the common people, then it starts to widespread, and all of a sudden you have this huge abundance of stuff that random people are doing. Again, you have no control over this, and this is going to happen no matter what. You know. You wonder what the response was when people started to switch to digital for editing, coloring, and just straight drawing digital over physical. Are you talking about just in terms of like the digital switch from analog traditional to digital mediums? I mean, people fought against it, right? Animators who were drawing on paper going into Photoshop or any sort of like digital animation program asking, why would I use that when I can just draw on paper, right? But then today, Photoshop is a standard. Drawing digital mediums are standards. Using 3D concept art is a standard now, right? You can't fight it. The idea is, how do I responsibly integrate it into my process? And do I even have curiosity behind it? If I don't, that's fine. I'm just keep doing what I'm doing. If others want to do it, why would I stop them, right? Especially if it helps them creatively on things in a responsible manner. But I'm not also going to be the one to call people out and shame them because they're doing certain things. Everybody has to go through the past and learn them as they go. And some people will stick with that because that's feel like what they want to do. But how does that affect me still, right? You might think, well, what if it does affect you? That's fine, because I don't see it as a way of a negative effect. I see it as an effect of like, what can I now do to improve my skill sets? How do I get better so that it competes, if not it singularizes me or makes me unique compared to digital art or AI art? So then the comment that I have for people is get better. If you're scared about digital mediums and AI art, you yourself train yourself to become better than that, right? This particular book that I'm showing people right now is an accordion book. This is made by a company called Etcher. This is a sketchbook tour right now we're doing. This is a book I just finished this year. You'll see a bunch of like interesting stuff in here. It's all imagery that's one. If I actually zoom out real quickly, I'll show you. See, sorry, there's open packs over here. So this goes out pretty far. So this is the second book I just did. Let's do the other side. No, I already saw the other side. So this is the first book. This is the second book. This is the new one right now we're doing. Another accordion book. So you'll see the empty side of it. It's just blank. Blank, blank, blank. Go back to this side. This is the start of it. This started from observation, drawing an airplane at the museum. From there I started creating more forms and shapes of airplanes. And I started drawing train, just randomly. This one was from a reference photograph. These were out of my head. Then I started drawing dinosaurs and birds and crocs, and I don't know why. But those are out of my head. DeLorean, I started initially out of my head. A few of the details I picked up a reference photograph. Out of my head, mechanical thing, boxes and forms. Mechanical things. This is from observation. This is at a museum. At the Huntington Garden yesterday. Let's zoom back in. So I literally did this one this morning. Just this morning. I did this one yesterday. I started the hand at a painting at the Huntington Library. I did this one this morning. It's about 12 p.m. right now our time, so I did that one around 10. So I already sketched this morning a little bit. Maybe about like 15 minutes. A couple of comments I missed. Apologize. Hold on one second. I'm going to adjust the chat window. Charlotte is asking, who would be some of my favorite manga artists I've come across. Inoue Takehiko from Vagabond, Katsuhiro Otomo for Akira, obviously. Tezuka, even Tezuka from Astro Boy is great. Katsuya Terada is not really a manga artist; he's more of an illustrator, but he's done a few mangas here and there. Honestly, Miyazaki's Nausicaa manga is one of the best as well too, and there's a score amount of others. Akira Toriyama, I love his stuff as well. Zeno's asking, you got this constructive anatomy book for muscle reference. How long should I put time in studying the bones and the muscles to get in my head, just like the basic shapes? I don't know. It could be years. It could be a lifetime. It could be just a couple months. But it's all dependent upon, not so much how much time it takes, but how much passion you have behind it. How much love you have in terms of just studying and drawing things. Not even just the anatomy stuff, but just in general, right? Because then you'll be willing to spend your entire lifetime just studying it. Even if you know it really well, you'll still keep studying it. And you'll never get to a point where you realize, hey, okay, I got anatomy and muscle forms and bone structures really well as a mastering level. Check mark, and I put that book away and never touch it again. That's not going to happen, right? You're going to come back to those fundamentals all the time. So never think of it as a method of a thought behind, I can understand something so much enough of that I can now just kind of go into my head and only draw from memory. Your memory will fade. And you can't necessarily retain all that information within a short amount of time. Again, you might need a much longer amount of time than you might realize. I mean, to understand what I'm showing you here, to do this kind of stuff, okay? The first time I ever drew this airplane, this P-40 Warhawk, I was a student at Art Center. I was 21 years old, 22, going to these locations and drawing airplanes. Before that, I had never drawn airplanes before the age of 22. I drew them, but not like this, using the dynamic sketching method with my mentor, Norm. So I'm 41 now, so it took me 20 years, right, to be able to draw these kind of airplanes. But you know what? I still had to draw this airplane from observation. Can I draw from memory? To a certain degree, but do I know every single component of the details of this airplane? Hell no. I can draw it in terms of the basic form and shapes of things, but in terms of the specific details of stuff, I want to still look at it, right? So I don't remember everything. Anyways, we're going to go to the latest page. We're going to use this section here. And I'm going to draw a werewolf. Actually, I'm going to stem it from this guy. I'm going to transition it like that. So I'll even just kind of describe to you mentally where my brain is going. Where my brain went. Sorry. I'm going to adjust a few things on the screen. The mouse is in the way. is that I have this head study. This is from a sculpture. I'll even show you the photograph of it. It's on my phone. It was based on this sculpture. I took this photograph at the museum yesterday. This is the shot that I drew, okay, from reference photograph. I finished it out of my memory afterwards. So I put away the photograph after I did the base forms of it, and I did everything else by memory. Now, based on this head study, I like this angle a lot. So what I'm going to do is go from here to here to here to a larger scale, transitioning him into a werewolf type thing. I don't know what's going to be, but we'll see. I'm going to use a fountain pen. This is my Esterbrook. So I have an idea as to what I want to draw, but I don't know what it's going to look like. Okay, so we'll see what happens. Let's see here. Arc Vein saying you're a professional artist, but you never stopped studying anatomy. Exactly. I think everybody will continue to study anatomy in terms of their focus of figure drawing endlessly. Amelia is saying you've enrolled in the dynamic figure class. Glad to hear. Is there a difference between dynamic figure and more traditional analytical figure drawing classes? There, slight degree. We're focusing on the dynamics of pose and camera. So I still will break down the basics in terms of how we draw components like the torso and the arms and the head and the legs. We don't look at them anatomically though. So when you say analytical figure drawing classes, they're focusing on so much of the actual anatomical information of the figure, where we deal with the major muscle groupings, but we don't deal with bone and we don't deal with all the small muscles, just the major ones that we can actually visually see. So it's not an anatomy class. I still touch upon it, but it's more about being able to manipulate the body form and posing in ways that you want to. So we use, yes, references a lot, and we break them down into those simplistic minimal forms, but I want to be able to actually distort and manipulate as much as we can. Let's see. How my color process works, it's more based on local colors. I'm not very fancy with color. I'm not very good at it. Color is such a unique thing, and I think for myself, I'm more of a shape and form person. I don't really see the world. I mean, obviously we say in color, but I don't really perceive color and light as much as interest of curiosity. I like it, but it's not something I want to act on painting on, right? I do a lot of watercolor stuff, but again, like I said, it's either going to be tonal or it's going to be limited to just basically the local palette or the local colors of the actual subject itself. I'm not fancy with color sets, but color is so subjective in terms of what you want to say. But if you want to control your paintings better, value structure is more important, not color. Color is good in expression and mood, but value is what gives you volume. Just seeing if there are any other questions. Do you think a mentor is needed to be or you can be a self-taught artist? Well, do you need a mentor is the first question, and no. Does it help? Yes. Can you make it as a self-taught artist? Sure. Is it difficult? Absolutely. Can you benefit by going to a school? 100%, right? So there's all these like specific things that you could be doing, but just because you do one doesn't mean you can't do another. These are just options. So are the benefits, pros and cons to all of those? Absolutely. How do I know? What it will be for you? I don't. You gotta just experience them on your own, based on opportunity. Do you have the opportunity for a school? Do you have an opportunity to meet a mentor? Do you have the chance to take classes online? Do you have the drive and the hunger to learn yourself, right? These opportunities are not necessarily always given to you, and sometimes you kind of drive them yourself, right? Um, Draco Rex Skull? I don't know what that one is, actually. John Albert. How do I approach armor on figures? Do you treat it as big shape fixed on figure or in a more analytical way? Yeah, basically, right? You can draw the underlying form of the figure itself and then put stuff on top, which is what you want to do, obviously. Sometimes you can bypass the whole figurative work and just go directly to the armor set, but I still want to process those armor pieces down to more basic construction of forms. But once you understand the mechanical nature of how that piece works, it starts to layer a lot better in terms of the connective tissue, not tissue, but connective elements of those pieces, where they're being fitted, but also functionality wise, depending on the culture of the armors that you're looking at, from medieval armor to like Asian armor to even African armor. They can all have different levels of materials and functions behind them, right? So The Happy Cynic is doing the 250 box challenge through Draw a Box, and you hit a roadblock because it's so mentally draining. Yeah, you take a break. Take a lot of breaks. Don't sit through that entire thing at once. I'm going to start sketching right away. Again, I'm going to take his head. And I'm going to start to alter his features a little bit. Turning it into more of a creature-esque wolf thing. So you have a mid-transition here, which is going to be a little bit awkward looking. Maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing. His eyes will start to kind of like widen up. Nose will start to broaden out. Look at the muzzle. With a lot of cheekbones. His ear will start to grow out. We'll make some kind of wolf man. A werewolf. Hair's going to start to grow out the sides. We'll give him lower fangs, canine. It's Halloween today, so doing some horror stuff. Last night I was watching Young Frankenstein. I haven't seen that in a very long time, and I've only seen parts and pieces of it. I never actually sat through the entire thing. Mainly because every time I put it on, I'm always like doing something else. So I never really gave it a chance to really kind of immerse myself into the movie. And I do like Mel Brooks a lot, actually. So it was nice to be able to watch that movie last night. Especially with this concept of Frankenstein, like when he's piecing the human being together, the concept of Frankenstein. It's kind of no different to this idea of the AI art. When you're generating this monster and reanimating it, you being the artist, when you're generating something of your own, it's in a 2D world, 2D dimension, where you're still creating amalgamation of pieces, as you bring it to life. So in a lot of ways, you are also a Frankenstein on a 2D level. Kind of almost imagine like the idea of different dimensions. We have 2D, 3D world perception, 4D and above, different dimensional planes. And in a two-dimensional plane, if we had living things that existed in the two dimensions, I can imagine these things are actually alive. Frankenstein. Frankenstein. Peter's asking, not sure if it's appropriate to ask, but I've had a question about the sketching classes. Can I contact you through email? I tried several times. What is it about it, Peter? If you want to ask here, just ask. If it's nothing more personal, that's fine. Try to email me again. It might have gone to spam, so I'll double check and make sure. If you're signed up for it, make sure you contact me. If you're more curious about how the classes work, you can ask here. The first time I watched a Mel Brooks film when I was very young, um, before being a teen, was Spaceballs. Of course, uh, the parents not knowing some of the underlying tones of humor, and of course, it went over my head too as a kid. But stretch his neck out this direction. I'm gonna increase scale over here, making more of a werewolf monstrous type now. We're not going to fully detail this one just yet. I just want to establish the drawing, and then we'll go into some of the shadows and hatching afterwards. I want to go up here. Okay, let's do another one. This time, it's going to be much more animalistic. I'm going to raise his snout up a little bit higher. I'm trying to imagine like a werewolf design that I really enjoyed from what I've seen. I'm trying to think of one. As I'm drawing, I kind of like to visualize or imagine things that I've observed or experienced that I can pull from of inspiration. My brain is doing the computations, right? I'm doing the AI art thing right now, pulling from multiple different images I've seen in the past, and then I infuse it into the drawing. Is photo bashing easy? No, it's not. Yes and no, actually. I'm sorry. See, yes and no. It's easy because you can just take a bunch of photographs and just drop them in there, but it's not so easy to make it work in a more legitimate fashion and a professional level. Photo bashing is a standard in our industry, but it's difficult to do in a very kind of a process in which it helps producing actual production work, because you have to have the fundamental skills, right? Perspective, lighting, value, shape, and form. Without those skill sets, the photo bashing doesn't work. So Brett is actually saying Underworld is something I usually turn to as well too. I think aesthetically, the werewolves in Underworld were pretty good. It was a really crappy one, not a crappy design, a crappy movie. But the designs of the werewolves were pretty interesting. It was called Dog Soldiers. Anybody seen that one? I thought those were pretty cool. And of course, yeah, Archivane saying Rick Baker's werewolf is probably the most iconic, from American Werewolf in London. Let's open the mouth wide up. The Wolves in the Twilight Saga. I barely remember that movie. I only watched like the first two, I think. But I remember them being more like just straight wolves, right? On the Sci-Fi Channel, Dog Soldiers. Yeah, I just remember the cover of Dog Soldiers because I would see it at a video rental store all the time. I would never rent it, but I remember seeing the cover. Yeah, the three wolves on there. They were like werewolves, silhouetted with the red eyes. I think that's what it was, if memory serves me correct. But the cover always seemed interesting to me. From Van Helsing, I barely remember that one either. I've seen it, but I don't remember it. Donnie's saying you're drawing a goblin popping out of a jack-o'-lantern. Awesome, glad you're drawing along. If anybody else is sketching and drawing, let us know what you're actually sketching. Great to share it. Ooh, let me actually pitch an idea to you guys, and I'll kind of see how interested this sounds. Um, I want to do it for YouTube, not Twitch. Under YouTube, Twitch will be kind of like what this is: Q&A, back and forth, sketching, demoing based on interest of stuff I have. I kind of want to try something a bit unique on my YouTube channel. which is a bit more of a interactive thing. This is interactive in terms of question and answering, right? But I want it to be even more interactive. So let me pitch this idea to you guys. Some of you may have used this program, web-based program called Magma Studio. Magma Studio is a program in which you can have a number of people on the web browser sketching program, and they can all draw on the same canvas with different layers. And what I thought about doing, where it'll be an ongoing series of videos, is having moments of these kind of live sessions where I would have special kind of either lottery systems or submission systems where people can actually submit and sketch with me live on like YouTube. And I would, we'd give a theme out and we all sketch and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you would still need some basic stuff hardware wise, either a tablet, Cintiq, that kind of thing. You don't want to draw with a mouse, obviously. iPad's a bit finicky, so, Cintiq would be best. But drawing, together on those things and even like giving feedback, oh, you want to change it like that or adjusting this here. And then also doing Q&A as people are there watching. So it would only be limited to like maybe 5 people per session. So it'd be ongoing. So I'm not, when somebody comes in once, they'd be limited to that one experience, and I would switch out people for next time. And then, as people are also then watching, they can ask questions as you are now. So we'd all still be drawing and sketching, but you get to see also then how, as they sketch and work with me, how it could be like adjusted or change that or think about this kind of stuff, I feel like on YouTube or any sort of like online streaming, there really isn't a lot of that kind of content, the engagement content. There's engagement in terms of like conversation, but not a lot of like actual hands-on kind of thing. Because it's either going to be monetized as an actual class, which it really wouldn't be for me in this situation, because it's just more like, here's a topic, let's just sketch, as if you're in a room and we're all on a big piece of paper, we're just sketching together, right? It's not it's educational to some degree, but it's not a class. The class format will be far more involved and much more different in terms of feedback and the lessons and plans and techniques. But this would still be kind of entertainment, if anything else, right? So I've been mulling over the idea and thinking about that. I might test one out this week, actually. So we'll see how it goes. The big problem I have is thinking about how to problem solve. Well, how do I let people in terms of like, how do I pick certain individuals? I kind of want to do it by a lottery system, but I'm trying to figure out how to do that in terms of what the lottery system would be. Do I pick names out of a hat in that moment of a live stream and then invite those people in? Or do it preemptively? So I get those names down, and then you're able to join in on the session. Considering the factor of time as well too, schedule, like when did it happen? Are people even available at that time? I don't know just yet. And the problem, of course, is consistency. As you guys have realized, I'm sure, I'm not on consistently in the scheduled time. Sometimes I'm at night, sometimes I'm at day. I mostly do like pop-ups, right? I post on my Instagram saying, hey, I'm going live in like 15 minutes. And just join in. Would this need to be much more organized? Maybe. Do I have the time for that? I don't know. I can say that now, but then once things get busy, you guys all understand that, right? But yeah. So I'm trying to figure that out. Someone's saying that you're watching on your phone. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to join on the phone, unfortunately. With Magma Studio, I would require that people would need to have either a Cintiq and a Wacom tablet, maybe an iPad Pro. But yeah. Oh, so test subject number 150 is saying, you currently have Magma open right now, drawing with a friend who is currently in the military. This is an amazing idea, Magma Studio. And that's awesome, man. It's great to hear that. You drawing with a friend over there. Pick some usernames who want to join them, put in a random generator. Yeah. If anybody has a random generator link that is a proper one, all the times I go to like a random generator, it has so much like weird ads and spam and stuff like that. I don't find it to be the best. A Google registration form. Interesting. How's it going, Nikki? Welcome. Michael Santiago is saying that too. Like, I used to have these kind of like sketching challenges on Instagram, and I would like judge them and sometimes do that kind of stuff. And in the comments is where you'd be able to actually not post things, but people can comment on stuff and whatnot, and I can then choose and pick winners and that kind of stuff. But it was all like based on submissions of what you put and tag me. It's still different because I want this to be live, where you're actually sketching with me. You know, Brett's saying you think of you think YouTube has a lot of untapped potential in creating community hubs to connect people. I agree. I think there is a lot of engagement on YouTube. Tons of people are on it. You can be spending hours just deep diving into just random videos. But I think it's still very much that aspect of it where you're only receiving. There's no back and forth as much live in that situation, right? There's comments, but the comments can also be kind of treacherous at times. Um, but I think YouTube has a potentialness in that aspect of it still being what it is, entertainment based medium, but still having some sort of actual, as Red Pirate saying, some kind of community aspect to it too, would be kind of amazing. I've been noticing the YouTube channel that I have right now is starting to grow a little bit, so I'm trying to give it a bit more attention. Like Twitch has been great, but it's not doesn't generate a lot, because it's just flooded with so much other video content that's live. And the whole art side of things, there is a community on there, but again, it's a weird mix of people. You know what it feels like to me? Twitch feels like the video version of DeviantArt, is what it feels like to me. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. And I was on DeviantArt for a little bit in the very beginning when they first opened, and then I left because it was weird. Not to say that people that are joining on Twitch are weird. I'm just saying people who post and share stuff as video content is kind of bizarre. The people that are on there are great, in terms of like interaction, questioning, that kind of stuff. They're awesome. And thankfully, my experiences so far, being online like this with you guys on either YouTube or Twitch, has always been positive. There really anybody here like trolling and that kind of stuff. There can be one or two people that say weird things, but it doesn't matter to me. But it hasn't been like a huge prevalent issue. So I'm thankful that hasn't soured my interest in involving myself in these kind of things. I might do one more actually. Let's go this direction more to the side of the head. And then we'll come back to the beginning. We'll start to darken things up and separate a little bit with hatching. Arcfan saying using like a Discord, possibly a Patreon reward, is a good way to narrow it down. That's a good recommendation. I appreciate that comment, Arcfan. I'll consider that. Yeah, Harax, I totally agree with you. With Twitch, because I'm so inconsistent with it, I'm only on once, like a couple of weeks of a month. It's just not on enough. It's got to be a constant stream, if anything. People are on there for hours sometimes just streaming things. I can't do that. Sounds intensive, John. Intense what you're working on. Yeah, the Discord community stuff is going quite well, I've noticed. My own Discord community for my classes, I'm not going to open that up. I still want to retain that too, being just class focused. But having my own private or separate Discord open to the public might be time to do so. It might be time. Let me zoom in a little bit now. Yeah, no problem, Max. As long as you guys are enjoying it, as long as I'm getting some kind of return, return for me is to be able to draw, to sketch. Any opportunity for me to sit down and sketch and draw is always a benefit. This one will be more straight wolf. With a really big mouth. I love the wolves that Miyazaki draws. Like in Princess Mononoke, those wolves are always so cool to me. Because he would make the muzzles really long, and then when they open up the mouth, it kind of reminds me of the design of the monster head from Beetlejuice, the guy with the big beak. If he was asking about physical workout and stuff, how important do you think it is to working out and being fit in relation to creating art? This is personally for me, but I would say it's made huge differences. In terms of my longevity, but also the endurance of being able to sit and do this, for a long period of time without injuring myself, because I have injured myself uh, by sitting here doing this for long periods of time as a student. And I've told this story many times about my injury to my neck in those areas. So that's where a lot of my problems kind of rose. Uh, Over the last, 15 years, I started working out very much in the beginning of 2005, I would say. I graduated Art Center in 2004. I was 24 years old. I'm a small guy, so I was very light at the time. So in Art Center in college, you either lose a lot of weight or you gain a lot of weight. And I lost weight because I barely had money to eat. I had to spend all my money on tuition and also materials. So I ate what I could, but we just had like top ramen, and we ate dollar hot dogs at the Costco store, and we ate scores of bread and salad, cheap stuff. That's all we ate. But my body was in very poor condition. So after I graduated, um, I started working out because the job that I started at a company called Technicolor here in Burbank had a very tiny little gym that they took an office room actually, and they just kind of structured it to be a gym, an internal gym. So they just threw a bunch of gym equipment in there, and nobody went in there. So after work at like 7 p.m., I would just go in there for an hour by myself, and nobody would come in. I would just work out. So that was an early start of my doing so, mainly because I wasn't at home. I was in the office. I didn't need to go home. I didn't do anything else when I went back because this is in my 20s, mid 20s. So I didn't generate books or produce stuff of my own. I wasn't an independent artist. I was working full time. So I just went to the gym and just worked out there for a little bit. And then over the years, I started to slowly gain. And the I went to a 24-hour gym after that one because that gym ended up being. I went to a different office, so I went to just a 24-hour gym. And the funny thing is, the gym membership that I have today is the same membership that I have from that long ago, and I've never gotten rid of it. So my rate on that, for them when they see my account, they're saying they've never seen it before. I'm like, what is this account? So, in terms of what you're paying, I literally pay $150 a year, 150 a year to access all 24-hour gyms, and that's the rate that I got in the very beginning. So and it's nothing, 150 bucks a year to join a gym, have all access. That's There's no way you can get that kind of rate anymore. So I held on to it. So I've had that for over 15 years. Um, and so I started going to the gym a lot more, and it really corrected my neck because my neck was crooked like this when I would draw, and then it straightened it out. Yeah, that's what I'm paying now for the gym, which is why I never got rid of that account. That's just the annual rate. Sorry, hold on. Sorry, I had the YouTube live stream also playing in the background, so I hope I didn't lose you guys. Okay, we're live still. Good. Let me just close that. We don't need it. But anyways, Adu, I hope that comment gives you an idea that working out does make a big difference. It helped correct a lot of issues that I had in my neck, blood flow, blood pressure, as someone's mentioning here too. It really helps a lot as well. But from 2005 to about 2015, I worked out intensively, like pushed my body to things that I thought I wouldn't be able to do. But then over the many years, I started accruing like small little injuries. I was pushing my body really hard. Like I said, I was trying to do stuff that I never thought I could actually push my body towards. But I think it's important you actually find out like what your limitations are and how physically strong you can be, because you're only in one state of your health and in a short period of time, and you mature, right? So I'm never going to gain the strength that I had, you know, 5 years ago, let alone 10. Um, but I'm getting back into it now. So because of the pandemic, I stopped working out, lost a lot of my strength. A year or two before the pandemic, I slowed down a lot because I was injuring a lot of my shoulders and my elbows. Nothing too terrible, nothing like where it was stopping me, but small. I would get small little twists and pulls, and it would take weeks just to recover from those. So I was never able to really max myself out in those situations. And I just realized that I think I was starting to hit that little barrier right there. If I was, in the world of like, let's say, athletics, sports, and that was my full time job. And I probably could excel even much more. But of course, that's not what I do. You know, I sit and draw most of the day. So exercise to me, I realized again was up. I'm thankful that I was able to push that far, but I know that I don't need to go further than that. Because that's not what I want to do. All I need to do now is maintain, and make sure that I have a consistent, working nature towards the physical part of exercise, so I can kind of keep this going. More to the benefit of this, you know. So I would recommend it. Even just daily stuff you do at home, stretching. Some people probably do yoga. Some people probably do different kind of exercises. I prefer weighted stuff, body weight exercises, calisthenics, and also weight exercises. I just find that more entertaining. I don't like cardio, but I need to do it. I'll be on the treadmill, but I hate being on them. Okay, from this guy, got into mid wolf, transition to almost like full wolf. We're gonna start to kind of place in some hatching and darks now. Werner was asking, is there any advice for you applying appropriate shadow density for faces and bodies? Well, first, observation really helps a lot. This is from based on a sculpture that I looked at a museum. I'm going to use this as a basis of inspiration to apply to the other one now. So observation is a big importance. The Winster is saying, yes, I worked at Tentacolor. This is back in '05 to '07. And you started your freelance career then, while in school. You did caricatures for them in Canada from '05 to '08. Oh, that's interesting. I'm not sure which office you were working in, but I worked at the Burbank office. It was Technicolor Interactive, so we were doing the game division. We were basically dang it, what do you call that? A service group, So we worked on multiple different games. A lot of the stuff we did were like cinematics, 3D to assets. I did concept art obviously too, but that work dried out pretty fast. Okay, let's jump back to this side. I'm going to shift the sketchbook over more. Let's do a bit of hatching and shadow play now. Ketchup Draws is asking, am I neurodivergent? Honestly, I have no idea what that means. Sorry. I'll look it up, research it myself. You can explain it to me. Update me, please, and educate me on it. I certainly don't want to say an opinion about something that I have ignorance to. Um, Demanche was asking, what do you think about too much information on the internet? Again, it's one of those beasts that have now been opened up, and you're not gonna be able to stop it. Is there too much on the internet? Probably. What can you do about it? Probably nothing. But the only thing you can do is maybe fluctuate or at least control how much you're absorbing. Right? Too much information probably isn't good, especially when it comes to like media stuff. I think the bigger problem when it is curated or designed to instigate stuff, right? Puppet control kind of things. Sometimes disconnecting from it, I think once in a while is an important thing to do. Step away from it, once in a while, take a breath of fresh air, get into the real world. This is why I love traveling so much, because like media and also information tends to kind of create a lot of stereotypes and mentalities of fear, which are unfounded. And when you actually travel to some of these locations, you find out it's nothing like what things will, not in media like news, I'm talking about also like film and all these different things. They're going to play upon this idea of fantasy, which can be seen as a negative or a pro. Um, it stylizes stuff a lot, but that's not the reality of the world. It's fiction, but a lot of people have a hard time, kind of separating fiction from reality. It's becoming a bit of an issue. So to be able to separate yourself from those things a little bit and to see the real world around you, meet actual people, right? Travel to locations, see for yourself. Um, I think is the best way to balance the overabundance amount of information, which you're not going to fully get rid of, and you can still be a part of it. But I think it's important to balance things out. Do I know of any good schools in Sweden? Unfortunately, I don't. Sorry. I wish I did. Sweden, I have not been to before. I would love to see it. Amelia's saying you started some strength training. That's good to hear. Yeah, keep doing that as much as you can. When it comes to the strength training, focus on the core and the back, right? Core is not just your abdominal, going to your obliques, serratus muscles, lower back sections. The core region is where most of your strength will come from. And then from there, in strength training, focus on your grip training, forearm down to the hand. When you're doing strength training stuff, you gotta just be able to hold on to things. So using a lot of gloves and straps, I actually don't go to that side. For people that are like power lifters, they'll use a lot of gloves and straps, which is fine. But for calisthenics or bodyweight exercise, strength training, don't use grips. Rely on your own grip. Lift what you can actually lift. John saying your workout is blacksmithing. That's awesome, man. I'm sure your forearms are strong as hell. So I'm going to start to use some inspiration from here. Going to some of the shadow shapes again. So underneath the cheekbone, I'm going to fill all this in. Down into the hair. I'm going to do a general coverage of hatching at first. And I'll start to define some of the darker contrasted regions as I go along. I want this side of the head to be light. The background of this fur is going to be dark. So I kind of create this opposition. Pull-ups are definitely the best workout you can ever do. That's what I focused on the most when I did my workouts. It was either dips and pull-ups. Push-ups too, every now and again. But it was mostly pull-ups. I was getting to the point where I was trying to push I was doing things like, muscle ups and one arm pull-ups and all that kind of stuff, Weighted pull-ups too, pulling up to like 50, 60 pounds pull-ups, repetition. And all general coverage right now, it's going to be kind of bland and similar here, but once I start to push contrast in different ways, it will define the details. All this is in shadow shape here, like that. Hatching direction-wise, I'm just kind of filling in one directional. Not really going with the form. It's all based on decision. So as I fill those areas in, let's soften up the edges a little bit. And just a few other areas I want to just collect together. And then we'll start to go into these dark spots. Do I have any cheaper pens other people can use for drawing? What pens am I using right now? Well, this one in particular is not cheap. This is a fountain pen from Esterbrook. Another kind of pen you could be considering, you see. For these sketches over here, I was using this pen. This is a Zebra. It's all Japanese, but the company is Zebra. And it's just a little Fude style brush pen. This is a couple bucks. Again, everybody knows that I use the Pigma FBs. These are BBs, big ones, but Pigma. I'm actually going to bring in this fountain pen also. Because as we go darker in these regions, having a stronger line with this guy would be nice. I'm going to separate the line here, broadening it up. And we'll start to go in there and start defining core shadows and recessed details. Let's push the inside of his mouth dark. Sorry, I missed a bunch of questions. Let me grab my mouse real quickly. A second. Difficult question. How do you deal with loneliness? Well, I mean, if you feel lonely, I hope that you have a good support system around you of friends and family. But of course, not everybody has that benefit and fortunate, connection. And in those situations, that you have to be kind of be the one to be active to remedy that, right? Um, Anybody can feel that way, especially even if you are in an environment with people that you will have with friends or family, you can still feel lonely because you have no connections, right? Finding connection is difficult, but you can't sit and wait for that to happen in any sort of means of relationships, whether through educational, through friendships, whether through other means, family as well too. Um, the longer you wait for something to happen, the more difficult it is to be able to actually pull away from that deeper sense of loneliness. I think you got to be the one to proactively feel comfortable in your own skin and get out there and do things that you feel interest towards, and that in itself will attract the people that you want to be with. Um, I'm not saying you got to distract yourself, but feeling comfortable just being alone is important. I'm not saying it to be dependent on other people. I'm saying that building a community of people that you are like-minded with are truly important to take you to those next plateaus. But I think you have to be active, proactive on things of actually looking for yourself in life, of what really intrigues you, what keeps you moving forward, right? And in that sense, you'll find then like-minded people you connect to. So for me, drawing was really obviously the thing when I was younger as a kid. Because as a young kid, when I was just, and before even high school, I was, in junior high or elementary school, I was growing up in a state, in a location where not a lot of other Asian kids were there. I grew up in Ohio as a young kid, and in Columbus, Ohio, there was I was like one of two Asian kids in a classroom. So I didn't see myself as being singular or separate from them because nobody ever treated me as separate. I never really faced any sort of like discrimination or separation from how I grew up. I'm not saying that that can't happen for a lot of the people that are out there, whatever ethnicity you are, and that's obviously a thing that still goes on today. But I am saying that for myself, I never really had those kind of experiences. I mean, there are moments, there are people that kind of like can be assholes and stuff like that. But as a young kid in my student body, I never really felt ostracized or separated from that group. But I think a lot of it was also because of the fact that I kind of had something that made me easier to move in different social groups. A lot of it was mainly because I was very unassuming. I'm not very intimidating looking. Um, I wasn't the most like vocal, but I drew a lot, and I think this attracted people. Whether you did it or not, people found something very interesting there. So all of us as kids, we're always trying to find something to kind of help ourselves fit into a social group, right? And when we don't really have that as an avenue, it's so difficult to figure out, who you are, where you want to go. So I can understand the difficulties of youth. Also depending on where you're growing up, your finances, even stuff we're talking about in terms of like the whole racial thing. Um, but I think regardless of all that stuff, if you have a passion for something, if you're able to find it through somebody or because you're able to just come across it, and that becomes the center of what you do, it's a big part, of how certain groups of people are able to come through life and success because they have that thing they really love. And for me, drawing really was that thing. And when you come across people that have that sense of complete devotion, I guess, something that's all they do, and they become not labeled to that, but they become synonymous with it. You appreciate it to some degree, you know. So I was always relatively welcomed in a lot of social groups because I also loved a lot of things too, like sports. I like playing sports. I was a small kid, but I liked playing sports. Um, Drawing. I love drawing, so I grew up with the comic kids and the goth kids, and all kinds of kids. Um, Music wise, I was interested in tons of kind of music, So I kind of easily grew up with a lot of different kind of people, honestly. But it's a tough question. Not a tough question, but a tough subject in terms of just the idea of like, you know, when somebody does feel that sense of isolation or loneliness, there is no answer I can give you, to help you get over that kind of stuff. I'm just saying these are based on examples of stuff that I grew up with, of what you could be thinking about to some degree. But you have to surround yourself with more people. You really do. Um, I know it can be scary. I know it's difficult to even think about how do I even just talk to people in the first place. But I think also as you mature, if you don't, I mean, first, of course, if you don't have that sense of interest in something that's fully committed to, it can be hard. Because then you really don't have a lot of things to connect to other people through. But you got to find what that is. But that's also maybe why you're here. Maybe you do have something of interest and curiosity. But if other people are squashing that, that's a big issue. You have to kind of be careful there. Be aware of it. Be mindful of it. I know that you want to find some sort of validation or encouragement from others, but you kind of have to find it through yourself sometimes. I'm not saying that you don't have to necessarily harden up. That was a situation what I went through where I hardened up my skin and I didn't let others in, and so I created a very strong barrier where I was not receptive to others at all, and on every level, sympathetically and emotionally. So I didn't care a lot of times. But growing up, you start to interact with a lot more people, you build better relationships, you become more self sufficient in that way, but also understand the strength of people, you know. But man, some of those things are not in your control, and that's what sucks. And that's also life, you know. You're not dealt all the cards that you're wanting, and I've been very very fortunate, but I know that other people are not. Doing a little bit of shadow play down here. This will separate the fur underneath the chin. We're probably gonna go for about maybe 30 more minutes. It's 1 o'clock our time right now. And for this week, I might try that community-based drawing Magma Studio together. So I may not establish a whole Discord thing just yet. I'll probably kind of keep this first one a bit loose and just kind of do a random choice of who I want to bring in. Hopefully, it's not disastrous in terms of who I let in that situation. Because what if I happen to like invite people, all of a sudden they're drawing really inappropriate stuff? Like, ugh, it's gonna be bad. Do I still use the Lamy fountain pen? Not really, not so much anymore. Oh yeah, Peter, that stuff I'm gonna refund on the shipping fee. So there's only a few handful of people that got that. So apologies for the delay on it, but you will be getting it back probably this week. Yeah, what happened was when I put the boot camp up, I did it through my phone on the app of the Shopify, and it attached the shipping fee on it. But I caught it real quickly because people were letting me know. So I think a couple of charges were hit on that part. But I'll make sure to get that part refunded because obviously there's no product. It's a digital medium. Would I recommend going to school or drawing on your own? Both. You should be drawing on your own regardless of what you're doing. Whether you go to school or not. If you happen to be able to go to a school because opportunity is there based on location or finances or travel, take advantage of it. because it's a great thing to experience. But even if you're not, you should of course still be drawing on your own. Mike was asking, sorry if I missed a couple of questions above. What was my inspiration behind Fish in a Forest? That really inspired you to draw in that season of life. So I was just curious. Still draw here and there, but running a company takes some time. It's a good question. No, well, I appreciate the question. So the Fish in a Forest was a series of images that I generated. This is like back in 2016 or something like that. I did a solo gallery show here in LA for it, and it's literally a series of images of a character walking through a forest with a bunch of fish flying around. It's basically, it's all fantasy based, and how it started were was a situation that drawing at a cafe with a friend. So we were sitting together. It was the first time meeting a friend of mine, and she was based up in Portland, Oregon. And I was visiting there for family. She just happened to live up there, and we knew each other through social media. And I really loved her work. Her stuff is just stunning. Incredible ink work, hatching. And so I said, hey, we should hang out sometime, just get to draw. And we did. And I was like, oh, I'm going to draw a bunch of fish. And she drew a bunch of forests, like trees, and she was really good at vegetation. And then we're like, oh, I'm going to put that together. So just in a situation of a session of drawing together, that idea came to mind. And I used that as a way to generate a bunch more images. So this is why drawing together with people really helps a lot. Creative inspiration. Let's go to this other one. I'm going to start at the bottom here. I'm just going to push in on the hatching below. So I want to frame his face. Kalyan is asking, have I watched Sixth Sense? If you have, don't spoil it, please. If you haven't, please check it out. Yeah, it's a good film. I actually, from that director, I prefer Unbreakable much more. Luther is asking from a quick question on studying anatomy. How do I learn more from the references and not just copy the contouring lines? Well, at first, copying is a good idea because you just want to get a sense of familiarity to it, right? So once you get the familiarity towards the actual proportions, anatomy, the elements of details, you then start to like move it in space by basically breaking down the basics of those forms initially, and then turning it, right? Not the anatomy part, but just the sections of forms itself, from a head to torso or the whole body as well too. And then start to attach a lot more details as you become even more familiar with the thing. But you got to start with a copy initially. And so the question is, well, how long do I do that? Well, there's no dictated time. It's all based on then how much familiarity you gain from the experience of practice. So the more you do it, the higher the sense of understanding. The problem is if you just do it nonstop, 8, 9 hours a day, you'll burn yourself out. So the balance of time and rest is important to also diversify your education, but that could extend the amount of time you need to also remember those things. So there's no way to judge that right now. But the idea of what you're doing by copying it first, and then maybe once in a while kind of drawing it out of your mind or playing with it. For instance, if I drew this hand over here, based on observation of a painting, can I draw that hand from a different position out of my mind, right? You can practice that. John saying with some former students, that's a good suggestion as well too. Yeah, good one, John. Thank you. Yeah, that it was unexpected for me to talk about this potential idea that I wanted to run by. But I'm glad I was able to discuss it with some of you guys that are in here. I don't know how many people are in here actually, but um, it was there's a concept of how do I interact in a way where it can be fun, it can still be something I'm generating drawings for, but it could be unique that not a lot of other like YouTube artists are doing. You know. Oh, okay. So Ketchup is saying neurodivergent, meaning people who are way different when it comes to social interaction, how they think. They have a special interest that are intense over socializing. I I mean, I think everybody has a certain degree of that, right? who probably feel that they're different when it comes to social interactions. I think, don't we all have a sense of either, I mean, even like that concept of imposter syndrome comes into mind, where you feel like you're not a part of this thing, the way you see yourself compared to others in social aspects, or even performance wise. But within specifically social, um, I don't know. It'd be hard to define that for myself. I don't really think I'm really way that different. I think I'm in the normal range, honestly. I'm wondering what that also means, though. Does it mean if you are that you actually socialize less, or you socialize more? Sounds like maybe less, right? Because it's so specific. But then you're also saying they have special interests that are intense over socializing. Interesting. So it's kind of a focus, like tunnel vision kind of thing. I don't know about that. I think most people have social anxiety in general. I remember when I was a kid, trying to like talk to people, super hard. So here, that shadow line separating his silhouette of the head that pops up. Push a little bit down here to soften up the edges. Let's go into the rest of the head of the side of the face here on this wolf. Using this line right here again to define that region. Ethan's asking, do you ever have days where you don't know what to sketch on paper? If so, how do you deal with that? No. I'm pretty much able to sit and ready to go all the time. How do I deal with it? From what you're seeing over here, a lot of this stuff, again, like I said, is stemmed from observation. This airplane I saw at a location, a museum, and I drew more airplanes. And then from the airplane, I looked at a photograph of a train. And I thought, oh, Back to the Future. I drew that out of my head. And I drew dinosaurs for some reason. So these are things out of my head. And then I went to a museum and I drew paintings and sculptures. And the sculpture was something I observed in the real world, and it generated into a werewolf. So in terms of how you creatively mix things together, that's a whole different topic. But in terms of where I get my pull towards what I draw, a lot of it is based on what I see. Victor, in terms of a fountain pen, I would recommend the Platinum Desktop Pen. Okay, it's a fountain pen. It's really cheap. It's like 12 bucks, and it's a really great pen to draw with. What do you think? I'm assuming what you're asking is what do you think about the russet brown color for the werewolf? I mean, it could be cool. I always like the idea of gray wolves. Something about the gray hair on wolves. I've always liked the aesthetic of that. Let's go inside the mouth again. Push this dark as well. Go back up into the eyes, pushing around the eyeball. Can I give any advice on using dynamic sketching methods to study humans? Well, think about what we do in dynamic sketching, right? What's the point of that process and method? It's to train our eyes to be able to visually break things down as simple as they can be as a shape to then form. We can also then visually record and retain that information as a visual library of things, a collection of forms, structures, and shapes, not the details. If I look at human beings, That is a job, about being able to break down the human form into its most basic primitive shape and forms. So as we're able to understand those forms, we can then turn it in our head a lot easier in 3 dimensions of space. So if I drew people on observation at a figure drawing method or at a cafe or live situations, I look at that person, I don't see it exactly as they are, I see the interpretation of the shape and the form to be able to capture what is being observed, right? Saw a post that in-person classes are in IG in this November, yeah, and some friends want to take it, but your schedule kind of clashes with the time. So are you going to continue to do more of these in person next spring? I will be, but the time will most likely be around the same. It'll be on the weekends, Saturdays, probably in the mornings. Um, it usually works the best that way because if by chance we have to go to like a location in LA, going in the morning is the best. You know, for traffic situation, but also because of the hours of time they're open. For those of you that are joining in right now, we are drawing a werewolf creature evolving and transitioning from the sculpture that I saw. And this is inside of an accordion book, which has a whole series of images, and this is one I'm currently working on. And we did a sketchbook tour earlier of 2 other books that were accordion books that were filled up completely. So once we're wrapping up and finishing up here, the recording of this will go back onto the YouTube channel. And so you can watch it from the beginning again later on. I did a bunch of card openings at first, not a lot, but just to kind of get things going. I don't know when I'll be doing another card opening again. I haven't bought new packs in a while. It's more of just a personal hobby, and it may be a little bit before I do it again. But I think the change to it on YouTube channel will be those live communal drawing sessions. Twitch stream will most likely still happen, but we'll see if the YouTube channel continues to get larger and better in terms of its exposure, but also because the content makes more sense on there. I might stick with that more. We'll see. I'm not sure if I'll touch that guy just yet. I'm just gonna get enough on this one going. I'll probably finish it up later today. I do still have online classes that are about to start in November. Registration is still available on my website, peterhanstyleart.com. And those are 5 week boot camps, which are not necessarily the most intensive, but it's more compact versions, which are then cheaper to be able to actually have out there. I don't know if I'll do boot camp iterations in the future again. It kind of depends on, again, like I said, how popular this one gets. What it feels like is that people prefer the full class, the 8 week sessions. So I think I might just end up sticking with that in the future all the way through. Because if you're going to spend that kind of money, you might as well just wait to get the full class, anyways. I think that's what's come to my realization. So it's a good learning experience. I'm glad to hear or see the interest in what people want. But the bootcamp will go underway. But the bootcamp experience will be equal to, in terms of my involvement, the feedback, the content of in terms of like techniques, all this stuff will be still there. So people that have already joined in right now, they're live with me right now. I'll be sending out a welcome email probably this week. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun sketching and drawing. Do I have any favorite concept art books? I do. Probably one of my favorite ones that I've mentioned before in the past is the book from Weta, the District 9 art book. It's pretty amazing. Okay. We start to see that transformation happening now. All the cross hatching going into it. Yeah. If you just look up the District 9 art book, Amelia's asking, do I think I'll stop online classes in favor of in person ones in the future? No. I will most likely hold on to the online classes as the majority. I'll still have the in person class as a one or two opportunity thing locally. Um, but I think the online iteration is really the only thing to keep me viable. Because in person stuff, unless I'm part of a school, it's hard to generate a lot of flow of traffic. But online wise, I have a better opportunity for doing so. Especially if I want to sustain this and keep going, the online part component shouldn't go away. Owen's asking, you're 14. I've been drawing since you were 8. Enjoy every day. When you're older, I want to become a concept artist. Do you have any tips for a young artist like you who wants to get into the industry? Don't worry about the industry just yet. You're only 14. A lot of artists may even tell you this. You might be even sick of hearing it. Oh, you're young. You have a lot of time in front of you. But the truth of the matter is, you're not gonna be able to work anyways for a number of years, so don't worry about that. I understand that you might have family that are saying, well, how are you gonna make this, a thing that you can actually have a career in? So there's a worry of that part. But I also understand there is that kind of focus and maturity happening at a younger age. So you being 14 is a very different me 14, when I was that age many years ago. Because you have different pressures, different experiences. Social media is a big part of it as well too. The influence of so much information. What I would say, though, of course, the more important factor is making sure there are two components that you have to have that's really a foundation that you need to establish to some degree. One is good people. I'm not just talking about like good people as like family and friends. That's obvious, but I'm also talking about in the art community of things. Friends that you can draw with, right? People that are in the creative field, whether they want to do concept art or not, that can be challenging you in certain ways. So it's not about a good amount of people that are just like encouraging, being nice to you. I'm talking about people that also face challenge towards each other, competition, right? Friendly competition, but you do need it. Through that, you find out very easily where you stand. Okay, in this current day and age, of course, we all understand to a certain degree that people are all being awarded for everything. Whether doing just kind of normal things, but challenging yourself, but also being put into a situation where you know that you're not the best is important because it establishes what you need to do harder and work harder towards, and things that you feel like you are strengths and weaknesses in. So, by surrounding yourself with people that are other artists or interests of similar things around you, you start to figure out that out very soon. You know, um, and that you're not going to always be patted on the back saying, "Hey, you're the best and the best of the artists." When you go to a college like art center, that the one I went to, people who are coming from an environment who are always told you're great, you're amazing, you're an awesome artist since a young kid, they come to that school realizing all of a sudden that they're not. You know, that there are other artists and students that are way better than they are, and not really having that kind of scope of understanding throws them for a loop. It makes it really hard for them to continue moving forward in a very kind of enthusiastic way because all of a sudden they realize they feel like they've been lied to. You know, um, I'm not saying that you should be harshly criticized as well either, but the idea of the reality of the world is that there are people in competition to what you want to go towards. So if you're talking about the industry, don't worry about the industry, but worry about how the social aspect of it works as well too. Because when you're working in the field, that competition is also very real, right? To get the job. So in a friendly sense of a communal aspect of friends, having that kind of friendly competition also makes you understand about your strengths and weaknesses that you can capitalize on or work towards getting better. You need that part. So people, truly important. The other aspect then, of course, the fun factor, right? Is it something you keep maintaining as being something fun to do for the rest of your life? Or is it going to be just turned into a job, right? I mean, I've talked about this so much in the past, but that transition, it can happen easily. Where you do this initially because you just want to, because you're a kid, right? But eventually, as you get older, it's like, I have to get a job. And this becomes work, 9 to 5. And you will hate it. I guarantee that. It'll grind you down to the stone. Um, you don't want this. So think about first maintaining that sense of enthusiasm and finding the right people in competition. Okay? Because that will also harden you up, but it'll still maintain a direction of focus of a goal that is pure to what you want to do. Appreciate you guys for the feedback, Anna, Halo, and also Amelia. Um, in terms of ink brands, it's going to be not the Sailor, but the Carbon ink. This one, the Sailor's good too, but this is my number one still, Platinum. Awesome, Hampus. Looking forward to seeing you there. For the bootcamp version, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight, for those of you that are hearing or join it, I'm going to try a few things in a similar kind of like vein as what I talked about today about the YouTube thing. I actually want to have a couple of sessions, maybe not even a couple of sessions, but maybe more integrate this idea of feedback by drawing together, by using Magma Studio more. So people in the bootcamp iteration will get a slightly different experience that I wouldn't do in the full version. Because it's a shorter amount of time frame, and the amount of people that are in there might be a little bit also smaller groups, I might try to use Magma Studio more to draw with people so they can actually do some of the exercises I'm actually doing in class, lecture base wise, and so they can draw with me. Or I will be able to do a thing where homework wise too, you submit your homework, I would bring it into Magma Studio and I would draw on top of the feedback situations, but then you can also draw in that same page together as I do feedback. So you can actually then try to find a way to correct those mistakes while I'm also talking about it. So I'm trying to think of a different way to make the unique experience of the 5-week boot camp that is not going to be offered normally in the full class version. That's if the class sizing is small enough. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, hopefully, Owen, that helps a little bit in terms of thought process and where you're going to go. Okay, but good luck to you, man. You know, at your age, with the interest that you have, and starting with where you kind of began at the age of 8 is perfectly appropriate, and I think it's going to be a good thing that you have those goal sets in mind. But you know, keep talking with other people that are out there and interact as much as possible, and do it because you love it. Everyone here has that potential to get to where they need to. And most people only see this flip side of the coin, which is it may not happen. What if it doesn't happen? You know, so much risk. And so don't even try. But, you know, the other side to that coin with what we're talking about is that anything can happen. You have that potential. So if that doesn't excite you, and you're always afraid to just try and attempt it because all you're seeing is that one side of it, you'll never get anywhere with it. In terms of guide on pen and ink and what tools I would recommend, starting off, especially in the classes that I teach, I recommend the felt tip pens of any brand. Faber-Castell, Staedtler, Microns, they're all good. And we use those tools mainly because we're talking about confidence boosting, right? Felt tip pens are a scary tool. But in the beginning, when you're first training, of course, get to those explorations of different mediums, pencils, dry mediums, that kind of stuff, ink and watercolors or paints. Play with all of them. Not in a formatted educational manner, but in a sense of play upon just feeling the material and seeing how it actually works on the paper. The more you start to get a sense of its actual tactile feeling, you build this relationship in terms of what works best for you. In terms of the movement, your pressure, how you grip it, your size and proportion. Your hands might be bigger or smaller than mine. So depending on what tool you're using, might feel better or worse. So you have to kind of find that personal connection to tool sets by playing with more of them, right? So be careful of creating so much of a system or technique behind every tool set because how a certain instructor uses certain things may not work for you. But there are some generalities. Felt tip pen is a good way to start. But play with a lot of other stuff too. The Dynamic Bible 2 hopefully will be out next summer. Next summer. I'm going to start working on it at the end of this year. I'm hoping to get it done within February, and so that the printing can go out by March. I'm hoping. That's the idea, but we'll see what happens. It's also kind of dependent upon Super Ronnie. Um, you know, with Kim Jong-il passing, I don't know where that situation is now, with printing wise, publishing wise. If they're saying they're unable to do so going into the future, I will do it myself. So regardless of it, I would like to be able to put that book out next year. If it doesn't happen in the summer, for sure, next year it's still going to happen, but it might be a different time frame. Instead of summer, it might be fall. Who knows? I want it to be summer because I want it to align with Comic Con in San Diego. But that's the idea again. So, Paul, you're saying you're coming at it from a different direction. You're 50, but you're training to be a good enough to be a working artist in your retirement, and also very much possible. Absolutely, nothing stopping you. When I say nothing is stopping you, the industry, just because you're older doesn't mean that you wouldn't have a chance. It's all dependent upon your work quality. Donnie, you're saying you're coming out to LA this weekend for the HR Gear Gallery, which I had tickets for. And I completely forgot I did. You just reminded me of that. And I think I may have missed the date. Maybe I can find it again. Any other suggestion for art, food isn't a tourist trap to experience? Honestly, if you're in the Giger Museum location, like Little Tokyo is awesome. There's some really good food out there actually. Uh, Japantown or Little Tokyo in LA has some good spots for just generally Asian food. I recommend there's a place called Suehiro, Suehiro, I think Suehiro, but it's a really cool little Japanese like diner spot. Not a lot of people go to it, but the food's really good actually. It's really close to a ramen spot that's really famous. Um, I can't remember the name, but it's on the first street. Jugadu is asking or saying, haven't drawn in a long while and it's grown on you as a strong fear to the point of debilitation. Oh, okay. This made me question my being an artist and really having a calling. What would I say about that? Well, um, I mean, there's so many factors behind this, right? Your age and where you're coming from and all that kind of stuff, which is creating this sense of fear, which is a genuine feeling that I'm sure is very valid to you. But I can also say that there's the things that you yourself you're putting it on top of. You know, no one else might be generating these fears for you except you, because you see the competition, you see social media, you see all the things around you that people are doing, and you feel like you're not good enough, right? Um, Even if you feel like you have a calling, something you really want to do, uh, but you haven't drawn in a while. So because you haven't grown fast enough in your eyes, you're putting that pressure on yourself. So how do I relieve that pressure and fear? I think a lot of it is just being able to sit down and do it again without that sense of expectation or goal of wanting to be a professional artist. The byproduct is that you're going to be able to do these kind of things potentially in the future, working, connecting, producing, applying for these things, jobs or whatever the case is. But that's just a byproduct from the investment of a skill set of passion that you have for yourself that you can then direct it towards those directions. But if you're unable to just sit and just do it because you just want to for yourself, that other stuff into the future is then a lot less secure. So, but that shouldn't be your goal. That's just another something that can germinate from your actions or something. But it does have to start from the very basis of you being able to sit down, regardless of anybody saying anything, and all the influences of social media and anything else that's out there. That you can just do it because you love it, right? Um, but still, I understand that there is this impending feeling of fear that's going to be behind it. And I'm not saying anything I'm saying here is easy either. You can't just all of a sudden change your mindset instantly. It has to be gradually produced that way, and it might take you years, many years. But are you still willing to invest that time because you love it that much? If you are, then the chances of byproducts of something happening in the future become more real. Do I know Steve Zabata? No. I know his work. I don't really know him, Tree Watcher. Sarag Games is asking, you're 17, went to work as an artist from home. So, well, again, being 17, the common phrase that most artists will tell you is that you're young still. You have a lot of time to be able to find that eventually on your own of a job or whatever that may be. Um, Same thing, like when I was younger, at the age of 19, is when I got my first experiences of actually working on like small little illustration jobs. Um, I was in school still at the time, and one of my instructors, my teacher, her name was Lisa. Um, She was a graphic designer, and she advised me and she helped me get my first kind of little gigs here and there. She became my first art agent, actually. She was really amazing and gave a lot of time and her efforts towards my growth as well too. And we're still connected together online. We still talk. And a lot of my former instructors I stay connected to. So that's a big part of like how I was able to like gain those senses of confidence, but also connections of things, finding the right people again. So if you're not really situated in a situation where you can find the right instructors or people, well, you have to kind of put yourself in that situation, right? So your high schools and stuff like that might have art teachers, but if you're driven and passionate enough and connected with those people, they might do something for you. If not, then maybe like in early college years, maybe go to like an associate's degree, 2-year college or community college. Maybe go to like a full university. But if you're saying, well, I'm not going to go to those things, I'm going to do it on my own. Well, the chances of that happening are going to get very slim. It's not impossible. You can still do it, but the chances of that happening are much more difficult to maintain or difficult to realize. It might take even more time, if anything else. That's just the reality of it, you know. Mainly because I've been instructing for over 10 years, and I've taught in the private sector of college university. I've taught in the public side of college, not colleges, but more like schools, like CDA and brainstorming online. But I've also done workshops all over the world, and I've taught people that were independent students to people that are going through whole university systems, and I see it in the outcomes within those things. So I would say there are certain advantages of going to a school because those advantages matter, But I am saying still that anybody that whatever path they go towards has the potential to be able to make it. Time is a factor, though, of course, at that point. I would say generally, people who go to the independent route of educating themselves through books and tutorials and videos will take much more longer, double if not triple the amount of time to get to where they want to be. I know certain friends who are self-educated, didn't go to schools, and eventually made it to the industry, but it's a small percentage. Out of all the professional artists that I know, you're talking about less than 5%. Less than 5% that are all self-trained artists. Everyone else that I know in professional field had some form of educational training. So that should maybe give you an idea, you know. Silent Observer saying, I'm working on my own novel, going to do illustrations for each chapter and do a concept art book. It's cool. I know people think it would be more rational to do a comic, but I don't have time yet. Well, I think it's a great idea. If you're writing your own novel and you're also illustrating it, yeah, it's a fantastic idea. I would say go for it. When I say double the amount of time as a you know independent student or self-taught student, double or triple the amount of time that I said. Think about the typical amount of years that a university student gives. Typically, okay, as a degree is about 4 years, right? To get a bachelor's in fine art, whatever the case is. Some students will stay there even longer because they take certain breaks. So art center students, as an example, will spend minimally between the amount of 4 years to 6 years. All right, that's going through a full university system. As a self-trained artist, I said double to triple amount of time. So from a 4 year period could be an 8 year time. If you're unwilling to even give minimally 10 years of training to this thing, it would be so hard to make it. You're thinking, well, I'm trying to do this in 2 years. And I'm trying to tell you, 2 years is not enough. 4 years as an independent student may not be enough. Going through university, 4 years of it, you only feel like you're just slightly ready. When I graduated after a 4 year program, I still felt like I need a lot more training. I don't know if I'm really ready to work yet, but most people feel that way when they graduate. And they could be fully ready. It's just that there are other things that you want to kind of learn more of, but you learn on the job, right? The education doesn't stop; it continues, but it transitions to different kind of like a platform from the educational field to the professional field. You're still learning things, right? But as an independent artist, because you don't really have that platform of a school to work with other people, instructors, hands-on kind of approach, you don't have that experience. The feeling of not feeling ready enough will perpetuate even longer. So that's why it goes longer than that. It goes to like an 8 to 10 year period, and just in formal training. So if you're unwilling to give 10 years to this thing at a formal level, now again, in a small percentage of people Are there examples of individuals that can go through like 2 or 3 years of experience of online classes and just start working right away? Sure, sure, but that's not the average. You're talking about a very small percentage. It's like the same thing you would say in like a university. Do people that graduate from like an art center college, getting a 4 year degree, do they all get work and jobs? Of course not. In the degree programs that on their website, they can say like, oh, we have 80% placement of professional people. It's not true. Okay, maybe in a certain amount of time, you know, after like a couple of years, most of those students will find a job eventually. But right when they graduate, I didn't get a job when I graduated. It took me 6 months, half a year to find my first job as a freelance artist, and that was on my own. You know, so you're not guaranteed work when you graduate. But of course, you have to understand that this is from 15 years ago. Today, you know, if I was to be honest with you, would I say it's harder now? To some degree, yes, because of the circumstance of the world around us. Would I want to be a graduate today, coming out of a school like Art Center? No, no, I would not. It's not because of Art Center. It's because of the circumstance of the world around us. It's unfortunate. The students in the last 2 years have suffered. A lot of them aren't working. A lot of them are looking for alternatives in terms of the directions. Um, they didn't make it. Timing is a big part of this world, you know, and that is a luck of the draw in that situation. And so you have no control over that. The only thing you can do is work as hard as you can, put yourself out there, and hopefully, based on the right person seeing it, the right connection, the right moment of time, it'll go your way. I'm sure there are many alternate universes, dimensions of a version of me, where when I graduated, I didn't get that job. Where the version I have right now of me got that job, you know? So in terms of yeah, opinion, some form of art, training, schoolism proco is okay, but they're not necessarily training, in my opinion. Those are video formats, so you can watch. It's educational, but it's not training in terms of a formal sense. Where what I'm talking about is the idea of hands-on interaction. You got to be able to actually go back and forth with an instructor or students. You don't get that at schoolism all the time, unless you pay for it, right? You can get that, I think, in some form of fashion. Proco, I don't think you get either. I don't know. But we're about almost done here for this session. It's about 1:30 my time right now. If anybody has any last questions or comments, let me know. This will be one of the last bits and pieces of it. So you'd recommend mentorships over these programs you mentioned? Not mentorships, actual classes. Mentorships are something different, in my opinion. But you need actual classes with a group of students, with an instructor that has a hands-on feedback approach that gives you critiques. Right, so doing sort of saying that you can get feedback at schoolism at a different cost. So you're going to pay for that more. So you're going to pay for that. It's going to be equal cost of taking an online class that does have feedback, right? Between $600 to $800. Schoolism, if you just do the subscription for video, is going to be much cheaper. But you're only just watching videos at that point. It's no different than watching stuff on YouTube, in my opinion. Silent Observer is saying that, of course, in terms of your improvements when you're at the community college for art. But that was 10 years ago, yeah. But that was 10 years ago. Imagine now, with more of your awareness and realization, but also gratitude towards that content, you'll invest even that much more time into it. You'll gain even more. But you need that experience of some kind. Because you can say, well, I feel like I'm mature enough. I can go on my own and watch videos and books and learn as much as I can. It's just not the same. The experience is different. Exactly as Brave Pilot is saying. Again, my classes I teach online are feedback based, but the pricing of it is higher cost than let's say like a subscription or paying for a Gumroad video for like $5. You can download videos I have on Gumroad for like $5, but it's just an hour and a half demo and talk, but you don't actually get to show me the work. You don't get to actually talk to anybody about it. You can just copy what I'm doing, but it's just a copy at that point. You have no way of actually understanding how to apply it, right? Ray is saying you're taking brainstorm classes and you've learned more in the past year just by having feedback and homework than having the last 5 years learning on your own. Again, this is a common response I get over the decade of teaching, right? Silvani is, saying that, I mean, honestly, that's a good approach. In your area of Manchester, kind of look around some local schools for just basic fundamentals. The idea is to just build a sense of a community, a discipline, and an understanding about where you stand of your skill sets by just dealing with other people in a more general sense of technique. Get to more of those specialized things online after that part. Spend about a year and a half, 2 years doing this, and then go to something else. Being in Manchester, maybe you can visit some local places in Europe. Maybe there's a great school called Idea Academy in Rome. There's a couple of schools around there too, in terms of like there's one in Paris. There's two in Paris now, entertainment art schools. There's the one in Denmark that we just talked about, the one in Viborg, right? The animation workshop. I mean, obviously in different countries, but you can potentially spend a summer and doing some of those things and then coming back, right? Some people in Europe have done that coming to the U.S. They'll spend a summer taking like 3 or 4 classes and here in Pasadena at the concept art design school or whatever the case is, and then go back to the respective countries and continue their education that way. This is what they used to do back in the day before shutdown had happened. But I know it sounds challenging because it's like, well, it's so expensive. Well, then you just save your money, right? Build up your funds to that. Maybe you have to wait another year or two until you have enough funds to do this. But that experience, I guarantee, will change you. Yeah, Alec is also saying as well too. Yeah. But anyways, I hope the conversations today helped a lot of you guys to like make certain decisions and choices about where you want to go next. None of this stuff is obviously answers. A lot of this stuff is just conversation about us being able to share our thoughts and opinions on things. I'm glad to be able to actually have this kind of back and forth communication. A lot of you guys are offering really good opinions and thoughts, and helped me a lot as well too in terms of like what I want to do in the future YouTube content. But look for more stuff coming up. I would say even like in this coming week, I want to try this interactive session next. Magma Studio, maybe with like 5 people, and sketching with you guys as the theme. And into the future, I might be able to try to open it up for people to apply for, and if they want to draw with me, and I'll have future sessions, maybe like once every couple weeks or so, and do it through Magma Studio. But we'll see how that works. I'm kind of curious just to how it runs. So this week, maybe around, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe Friday. No, I'm sorry, I travel Friday, maybe Thursday. Thursday, I'll try it at that point. It's Monday today, so Thursday I might go back online on YouTube and try this really quick Magma Studio session online live, and we'll see how it goes. So look forward to more of that stuff in the future. Thank you guys for joining in. Here's a little bit of werewolf transition, and happy Halloween for those that are actually going out, partying and stuff like that. Stay safe, despite all the craziness of the news right now is going on, and especially for things like that happened in Korea. Unfortunate and tragic, but stay safe out there, you guys too, and I'll speak to you guys again. Thanks, you guys.